At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Informer from below, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Houston Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you now. I do apologize since the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN Sports Betting Network, that is from 9 to midnight. I do have to cut the recap short today because I'm doing this right around 7:15 p.m. Pacific time, and I need to wrap this up in about 8 minutes because we had north of 55 games on the college basketball board for this Thursday. We're going to get you guys some bank shots there, and even though I'm not going to do too much of a recap today, we're going to get you set as to what we're all seeing in college basketball right now, ways to be able to just take a look at regression, ways to just be able to help out your handicapping in general. As in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Justin Perri. He does great work over at Shot Quality Bets, and I'm going to ask him this question. How do we know whether a team is getting unlucky or if they just flat out stink with regards to being able to make shots? Because that is so much of what Shot Quality is all about. So we're going to pose that question to him as well. We're going to have some fun there. And then in the final segment, loaded card for this Thursday. Not a lot of ranked teams, but there's a lot of stake out there, and being a lover of Texas Roadhouse, I do love that. We're going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get any Twitter/X questions today, but did have a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a very, very brief look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
A team that has been consistently cashing free all season long comes up just a little bit short on Wednesday as James Madison, they get the win, but they are unable to cover what was in a lot of places about a 4.5 or so point line, 77-73. They had full control in the first half, and then for Arkansas State, they make just an absolute bonsai charge. So if you had this one, this was rough. James Madison was up 69-56 with about $1.52 remaining. And then from there, Arkansas State plays a foul game. They're able to get their way back into the number. They are able to weasel their way back. I was not able to see if there was some sort of a buzzer beater or not, but from reading the box score, it looked like there was some tomfoolery that happened very, very late in this one. So that was a relatively brutal one if you did have James Madison. And also if you had this total under, man, you were able to get there very easily as that was a total of 160. But for James Madison, they went just 6 of 18 from three-point range and did a nice job holding down an Arkansas State team that went 9 of 30 from distance. And for James Madison, you were able to get a nice performance out of Noah Friedel. He was able to give the team 19 points, 10 boards, so no cover there, but a relatively solid performance. And for Gonzaga, it's been wobbly all season long. They restored order against Portland, 96-64. Gonzaga has really been covering a lot of these big numbers. It's been in these step-up games where they just have been completely outgunned, as you had coming in off the bench, Mr. Braden Huff be able to give the team 3 of 5 3-point shooting, 25 points out of Huff in this one. He was huffing and puffing and blew the house down of Portland. As for Portland, they just weren't able to get anything going. They got completely decimated on the glass, 43-29, so a very quality result there. And this was a quality result if you took a look at UIC, one of the better defenses in all of college basketball, team that just has not been able to develop a lot of offense, 61-56. They take down Illinois State, an Illinois State team that has been relatively rough with regards to their offense. all season long. We didn't have a lot of your top cover teams in all of college basketball taking the floor or anything like that, but Troy has been one of those teams that have been able to cash for you all season long. They're up to now 15-5-1 against the spread. They handled the Marshall team that has been rough to say the least all season long. They were able to get that win by a count of 82-66. They've been one of their better teams in terms of being able to get you to the window all season long. By the way, clean up from yesterday, Pacific. They did not cover against St. Mary's. They got land-based once again. They're now down to 5-18 against the spread thus far this season. Missouri, they entered into the day on Wednesday 5-17 against the spread, and as of right now, they are losing to Texas A&M 38-25. Just started the second half. They were without Sean East very unexpectedly in this one. I did not see if it was a suspension or if it was an injury. Quite frankly, it does not matter because he was out of the fold, and it doesn't matter whether you're out playing hooky or if you're out due to illness. You're out of the fold, in my opinion, so it's all graded the same. If you're out, you're out. You need to be just taken off the floor in general, and right now we're seeing Northwestern handling Nebraska as I am doing this podcast at about, I would say, 9:20 p.m. Pacific time, 50-35. They're currently taking it to Nebraska, and this is a game that is going to be coming down to overtime. Southern Illinois is going to get the cover. Looks like they're not going to be able to pull out the outright win. Drake currently up by a count of 90-86 with about 50 seconds remaining, but the Southern Illinois team, barring any sort of tomfoolery, is going to go to 16-6-1 against the spread. They've been one of your best cover teams in all of college basketball, and looks like they're going to be able to do it once again. So that has been rock solid. And then another team has been very good to you in terms of being able to cash tickets all season long. That'd be High Point, one of the best offenses in all of college basketball thus far this season. But they fall to UNC Asheville, and that drops down their cover rate to 14-7-2 against the spread. UNC Asheville, they get it done by a count of 86-81 as High Point. They go just 3 of 17 from three-point range. They still were able to get to 80, but you had, for UNC Asheville, every single one of their starters be able to reach double figures. Drew Pember wasn't even the best performer in this one. That was actually Nicholas McMillan, who was able to supply 19 points, 7 rebounds. Like I said, I do have to cut this short, so hopefully I'll be able to do a little bit more cleanup on the podcast tomorrow because we just have a lot of games on the college basketball board for Thursday. You always get that with these Thursdays, but if you're taking a look at the trends that we're seeing in college basketball right now, it's been a rough season thus far for home underdogs, and it just hasn't really gotten better over the last 7 days. Home underdogs are 42-54-1 against the spread. Now, that does not include these teams that are laying 1 to 2 points as unranked home teams against the ranked road teams. That continues to be hot, but home underdogs themselves, any sort of underdog, that has been tough. Meanwhile, with a few results from Wednesday pending, 160 overs to 160 unders in college basketball over the last 7 days. That's a 50-50 split. Home teams in general are hitting at 43.3% over the last 7 days in college basketball. That's pretty stark, and if you're looking at season to date in college basketball, the over is sitting at 51.3%, and, well, my under with regards to Syracuse, that was another one of those games that went way over the total. That was just a bad read by me. We will look to do better on Thursday. I will be back on an under, and hopefully we've taken some more trustworthy teams with that under for this Thursday, but 1,951 overs, 1,054 unders. Meanwhile, home underdogs overall for the season hitting at 48.7%. 495, 522, and 17 against the spread. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Wednesday. Coming up next, we talked with our good friend Justin Perri about how we know whether a team is just getting unlucky or if they just stink at being able to hit shots, what he's all taking a look at in terms of a handicapping perspective in college basketball, some of the ways that he's able to sift through the minutia, just be able to stay sane in general, and why you don't want to be just going too far in on one or two specific basketball plays, and why volume might be your friend this time of year. That's up next right here on Cusco Suits with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast. And we're back to the lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Suits with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, Justin Perri. He does such good work over at Chalk Quality Bets. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love in a sport that can be harebrained, just absolutely insane. He's able to do a good job of being able to maintain some sanity, and he goes to the park from time to time to give us some tremendous picks as well. I always love being able to take a look at those. And if you're looking for his TikTok, that is at College Basketball Picks, which is just an absolutely tremendous handle. Meanwhile, if you're looking for him on Twitter/X, that is at Justin Perri, the number 8, last name is spelled Perri. And Justin, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, it is always such a good time to be here. You always make me feel bad for how little I use that awesome TikTok. I got to get back into making those videos. It's been cold in New York, but the basketball streets are hot. It's been a fun season, a really, I think, interesting one to try to break down, and maybe even a little bit of a tough one to handle compared to past seasons for a plethora of reasons. But, amongst all the variability and crazy results every night is a potential for a process that can get you home and keep you sane. And like you said, it takes mental fortitude in college basketball as well. But, you and I both approach it through data and numbers and, something to keep us from going off the deep end by just trying to, price things without a process.
Yep, absolutely. And it's been a very interesting last few weeks in college basketball because something that I've been highlighting on this show is the fact that home underdogs have really not done well this year. They're hitting at less than 49% for the season, but what has been hot is a sort of trend that we have seen in college basketball for many, many years is when you have the unranked home team being a favorite against a ranked road team, those have been hitting like absolute wildfire. And how have you been taking a look at some of these home spots? Because we've been noticing a lot of dead home underdogs, but a lot of teams on these very tight lines at home, they've been the ones that have really been coming through.
I think, you can find pockets of value in these efficiency models that set and price, especially openers these days, and take advantage of that if you understand sort of their language and where they're going to derive their information from. There's a lot of leeway in terms of understanding home and road performance, things like KenPom and all those great analytics sites that I love and use every single day alongside my shot quality numbers. They can, potentially predict matchups that, don't take into account certain factors, whether that's home and away because it's a raw percentage point or a raw points amount versus maybe emotional factors, historical factors. There's just certain teams that struggle going into certain buildings. You as a basketball fan, or there's coaching styles that won't line up against each other, or as an analyst can now take all those things and combine them with the data and understand like this is where the data can miss. This is where the data can hit better understanding. Okay, this team just really doesn't play well on the road. And you look at season stats, that's an average. You have to understand the power and the danger of an average, right? You have a team that's good at home, bad on the road. Their average is going to show a middle ground team. Like, is that real? Is that performance just luck? Are they going into tough environments that they're unfamiliar with? There's a lot that goes on in a college basketball game. How are the rotations working? Where in the season are we? How are things being presented? And again, which I'll say a million times because I do think it's the key, and I'm sure you agree, it's matchup based. It's how does this team's offense mesh with this team's defense? And are they going to attack the rim a lot and face a stout rim defense? Or are they going to try to take a lot of threes and face a team that can't close out jump shots? And so you'll get good looks. There's so much that can go into these games. And then, of course, you try to give yourself the best position or the side that you think has the best chance at winning, and then you hope the shots fall because, that's a little out of our hands. I think the best idea is just to try to put yourself in a spot that you could say even after the game, like, yeah, I'd rebet that even if I lost, like even if the shots didn't fall. I felt like my team had a good chance at winning is really the way I go at it. And it's kept me around this long,
Yep, I'm right there with you because I am from time to time, you see absolutely insane things like I was on Tuesday, the old South Carolina versus Ole Miss game. It looked like South Carolina was going to run and hide with it, and then they went as cold as an igloo the last few minutes to not be able to cover my -3.5. And those are the sorts of things that are going to be happening. And just how much of this, in your opinion, do you think is just mindset-based? Because I do think that's very important with a lot of people out there that are listening right here on Cusco Soups, also betting the Super Bowl, because there's a lot of people that they want to put a lot into one play. They want to put a lot in the Super Bowl and everything like that. And I think that that's the exact opposite way that you want to be approaching college basketball, because you just mentioned it. Volatility does happen. And I think that the real winners when it comes to our sphere are the people that they keep at it day in and day out. They find their edges, and those little edges just amount to a lot long term. Whereas trying to get rich quick on like one or two big giant slates in college basketball, trying to be able to put a lot on just a few separate plays, as we know, if the bounces don't go your way, you can go bankrupt very quickly.
Yeah, and football is shaped really weirdly. You can get some weird bounces in that.
Oh, game. Yes.
And I mean that both literally and figuratively, right? And it applies in basketball as well. There's people out there who study the air density as a function of how three-point shots can fall. I'm not even joking. It's crazy. I think it's cool. I'm crazy cool. But, it's not an easy game to fully predict. And you can't take the same formula into low majors as you do the power conferences. And, certain teams have certain tendencies and weaknesses. It's a fun game, but you're definitely going to look as dumb as you can smart at every turn, as very often, sometimes prolonged durations in either direction. And you think you've experienced the longest duration, you probably haven't. Like there's going to be hot streaks out there that you can't believe, and there's going to be cold streaks out there that you can't believe. The goal, I think, with betting growing as it is to keep people as responsible as possible, managing your bankroll, making sure that you can play in a way that suits you. It's a hobby. It's a game. At the end of the day, you are competing. There's risk involved. So it's about approaching it as intelligently as possible for me. And I personally take as much human choice out of it. I don't choose my plays. My numbers choose my plays. Like what the statistics that show me the reasons that teams should win or not are why I make plays. And, we see it. I do it every single day with SQ. We qualify things with like advanced stats. And that's a little insight into my personal process where I do look at like individual matchups, how, certain teams are going to approach playing at certain shot types, defending, attacking, really creating what you have.
Absolutely. And I do think that it is so important to just really find your niche as well, because there are some people that they're going to have more select and a couple smaller plays, but at the same time, you never want to go completely overboard on one play. And as per usual, I think that anyone in this beer is going to tell you this: never bet more than you can afford to lose as well, because it never results in anything good. As joining me on the show, we have Justin Perri. He does tremendous work over at Chalk Quality Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Justin, when it comes to not so much one or two specific teams, but what are the types of teams thus far this season that you've been taking a look at? And I know that it's relatively broad, and it is going to vary from time to time, because you were mentioning it before, and I'm a very firm believer in it. Matchups are the things that you want to be taking a look at the most. Just how you gauge that specific matchup, I think, is very, very important. But I do take a look at the landscape in college basketball right now, and typically I used to want to fade those teams that have higher variance, that play super duper up tempo, but at the same time this season, I've been finding a little bit more of an edge on these teams like in Alabama, on these that are able to go into flamethrower mode from three-point range. I'm not sure how you've been gauging that, but I do feel like these teams with a little bit of higher variance, they've actually been, for lack of a better term, hitting a little bit more this year on that higher variance, just with the way that efficiency in general has been elevated. I feel like that has actually been their friend this year.
Yep. You want to know how you win basketball games? You put the ball in the basket. You want to know how you put the ball in the basket? You take shots. So the more shots you take, by pure definition, you should score more points. And of course, you can't just take heave hose from nowhere. But the idea of getting more possessions than your opponent is a tried and true way to do it. And, and more effective possessions as well. And Alabama, teams like that can push the pace and also hold back on turnovers, take effective looks. I think especially now with rule changes benefiting offense, we have seen that this season in more points than ever. A lot of overs. There's like early in the season, just overs, firing. And you might not feel it now. Unders are definitely competitive, but it's because the lines are higher. So the lines have moved up considerably this year. The number of totals sitting under 140 this season are like almost gone compared to years past, it feels like. So we are definitely seeing a faster game and a more offensively catered officiating process. So it leads to more points, and teams that can then score in flurries are more benefited than those that maybe rely on defense. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be very interesting come March to see, the tournament in what is currently the most efficient season of college basketball scoring on record. That's going to be nuts. Could be the most exciting, with the most runs, the biggest, craziest back and forth responses, microwave style players able to, create space, get fouls, get to the line, change the course of games quickly. It's going to be cool. I think it's great for college basketball. We're going to have probably one of the best tournaments in a long time, is my prediction. And then what I mean by that is probably like a lot of upsets, a lot of craziness. My bracket, I am anticipating, is going to be nuts. But yeah, I don't know. I think you want to lean into teams that the most effective shots the most frequently. And, probably also the ones that are getting a little unlucky. Teams that are taking good looks but not hitting, and teams that are just, running into hot performances against. Right. So when you see a team like this walk into an opponent's building and on the road and you lose by 20 because they shot 57% from three, the next game their line's 2 points discounted long term, those 2 points can be profitable. So I don't know. It's not that simple, of course, but the idea is still there. You want to find teams that have gotten unlucky or underperformed or been overperformed against and try to find those pockets of value on reliable teams that put themselves in positions to score effectively and defend properly.
And I think my follow-up with that is, how do you base a team that's getting a little bit unlucky versus a team that, I mean, for lack of a better term, I think that this is perfect for Thursday, they just stink. Like IUPUI, for instance, this team has not been able to put the ball in the basket for the last few years. They've been a big giant fade this year, and Saints a nice run in conference play last season. It's been a team that's been absolutely horrible. Detroit, for example, man, that has been a rough team as well. How do you discern a team that is just getting a little bit unlucky versus a team where it's like, nope, it's not unlucky. They just flat out aren't very good and they're outgunned?
That's not the easiest question. And you can use a combination of things to really understand that. Detroit is going to come up as one of the luckiest teams simply because, 0-24 is pretty statistically unlikely. Shot quality does have them, garnering a few expected wins. I think right now it's a total of 4 in the entire season where they had an expected win probability over 50%. They were against Eastern Michigan, SIU, Edwardsville, Ball State, and Central Michigan. So you can go look at some of the scores, and the way it looks there is they probably had a nice ability to get shots up, but they couldn't hit anything. And that's going to show up in their stats. And I think you have to be able to understand luck versus process. This team currently rates in the bottom 75 or bottom 100 for shot selection, shot making, turnover percentage, rim and three rate. They don't take good shots. They're, going to lead the league in terms of like isolation frequency. Yeah. 5th in the nation in isolation frequency. So they very frequently just can't develop good shots. So you will see the signals alongside the results that can really key you in and be like, all right, this team just can't. And, they actually are middle of the pack in terms of developing points off ISO. But the problem is that the middle of the pack for ISO is the bottom of the barrel for basketball. 0.85 points per possession isn't going to cut it. They're pretty bad in that sense. We can identify that luck factor being a little bit inflated just because there's, almost a difficulty in modeling the end behavior in Detroit and Mississippi Valley State. Those types of teams are just so far off the pack that you do need to approach them with an understanding that at the end of the lens, the curve can be a little different.
Yeah, but it certainly can be. There are just some of these teams out there that you want absolutely no part of whatsoever. And then there are other teams where it's like, you watch them, you feel like things should be going in the right way as well. So I do think that from time to time, you just have to utilize your eyes and trust in what you are seeing in terms of things being able to reverse for some and not reverse for others. As Justin Perri does great work over at Shot Quality Bets, he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Justin, this could be a team that's going to be playing on Thursday. This could be a team or two that we might be seeing a little bit further down the line. But in terms of teams that you've been taking a look at, and either you're feeling a little bit more stock up or stock down on them, or a few that do come to mind that are really just grabbing your attention right now.
Thursday pack. It's going to be a fun one. We'll have a huge slate. I will be doing a bunch of live betting, I'm sure, using the fun shot quality live regression model that we've been hosting our show using and doing all this stuff with. There's some big games on tap. I'm definitely looking forward to that Arizona at Utah game. I think I'll be looking for Arizona to stumble. I imagine Arizona is going to get a pretty fair chance at being a favorite. Looking at like a -1, -1.5 type deal, maybe close to a pick 'em, and I still think I'm going to go with Utah. They've been one of the stronger teams at home. I think you can just continue to look into their metrics. Everything tends to line up, and there's a point where even if they're overperforming routinely, you have to maybe consider that overperformance isn't just, not an equal amount. There's a minority amount of teams that do not regress to shot quality expectations, right? The majority do. The idea with shot quality is that over time, the majority of teams and all teams over the long period of time regress to shot quality. But in a given season, that really would only mean that the majority of them would by expectation, not that all of them would. So there will be cases where shot quality will say the entire season, this team overperformed in certain aspects. That's okay because that's part of the data set. So as you learn to read it and understand it, I think Utah is really at this point where they've shown time and time again that hosting teams in the Pac-12 here they can win these games. So seen Arizona stumble. I think we've seen Stanford show us kind of the mobile big man problem that Arizona just can't contend with, and Utah should be able to replicate that a bit. So looking at Utah, looking at that FAU at UAB game, Greg, like that's a beauty. FAU on the road should probably be favored again. I would look towards the home team to cover, especially if the market moves on FAU and you can get that thing close to 2 possessions. If I can get UAB +6 at home, I know that's probably dreaming, but it's probably not out of the realm of possibility. Those are some fun ones coming up for Thursday that I'll be paying attention to, some of the games of the day, see how those go. Fun behavior experiments in terms of understanding data and performance.
No question about it. With regards to Thursday, it's always what I like to call a day of a lot of steak. You're not going to get as much sizzle. That Arizona versus Utah game, that is going to be a nice one, but you get a lot more of those mid-major games out there, especially with James Madison and Appalachian State playing on Wednesday. That does leave a little bit more of the mid-major teams that are hovering right around 500, taking center stage on Thursday. I know that you love the Metro Atlantic as well, and Justin, you just do a great job taking a look at this great sport that we all know and love of college basketball. You do amazing work over at Chalk Value Bets. You do a great job covering a little bit of everything as well. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I do a bit of everything. Really, main focus college basketball, and then 1A, Jalen Brunson and baseball. Probably not you, 1A. A fun balance. You can find me on Twitter at Justin Perri 8. I do a lot of fun stuff with shot qualities, expected metrics, and really just diving into how to use this new advanced, very precise data set to enhance what you're doing. And it really worked for me. We're having a good time with it. It's very different, and next wave of data, very similar to like expected goals in soccer, except for basketball. So if you like that stuff, definitely check it out. We do, picks every day, talks all the time, shows a couple times a week. So, and then of course, Greg, appreciate you having me. Always happy to come on the show and just hear me around here and on the Greg Peterson Experience. It's a cool show on VSiN.
Absolutely. That is a very nice plug that you gave there. We always do appreciate that, and always appreciate getting Justin on board. He's such a great mind when it comes to taking a look at this tremendous sport of college basketball. Every single time he joins the show, I feel like we get just a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Justin for joining me on Cuts Sleeps, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to get Justin Perri aboard. Does such good work over at Chalk Value Bets. Enlightens us so well on the game of college basketball. There's a lot of complexity to it. There's a lot of things that sometimes do not make sense, and Justin is a man that does a great job of shining a light on all that and helping make the senseless make just a little bit more sense. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_D1, and we are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then the extra games, the games that involve 6 digits. That would be the Northeast Conference. If you'd ever have Chicago State on the board, they'd be there. The Atlantic Sun, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Northeast Conference, if I haven't said it already, the America East Conference, the Big South. Those are the conferences that are at the bottom along the Southland. So let's get things started with 755, 756 on the board. It is Chattanooga. They're facing up against VMI, and VMI does find themselves as an underdog of 14.5 to 15 points. So on this game, it is between 156.5 to 157.5. I did set Chattanooga as a 14-point favorite, so here at the 14.5 to 15, I'm going to be willing to take the points with VMI. Now, what has been really interesting about VMI is that this team has been rough with regards to their defense, to say the least. When you give up 100-plus points 4 times in a month, you know that things are not necessarily going well, although they're actually giving up fewer points per possession this season than they did a season ago. But for VMI, they've actually been playing better defense when they've been on the road rather than when they have been at home. for this VMI team, especially from three-point range, because in terms of raw points allowed on a per possession basis, they're giving up about 6.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. But the reason why these numbers have been just so harebrained with them is that they're allowing opponents to shoot darn near 40% from three-point range against them at home, and they are going to be facing up against the Chattanooga team that, you guessed it, they've been able to do a very good job of being able to shoot it from three-point range. Chattanooga, they themselves are going to give up the arc a little bit. They're about 193rd in the country with this regard, allowing opponents to shoot 34.7% from distance, and this is a Chattanooga team that they themselves, again, lack a little bit with regards to their defense. 192nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 17.2 more points more per 100 possessions in a roadside court environment rather than at home. But I do think that you're going to get plenty of points up on the board because you do have Trey Bonham, along with Hunter Huff, who followed their coach Dan Earl over from VMI. They've been able to combine for about 33 points per contest. These two guys are combining to shoot about 40% from three, and that's a little bit of a part of this as well. Dan Earl was at VMI 2 seasons ago. Now he coaches for Chattanooga, so this is a return trip for him. So lots of motivation there. You've got Sam Alexis, who's been able to do a nice job down low for Chattanooga with about 11.5 points, 9 rebounds per contest, but VMI is actually able to counter that as they do get about 10.5 rebounds per game out of Tashad Jackson. He only gives you about 7 or so points per contest, and the big key here for VMI, taking care of the ball. This team is in the bottom 15 nationally with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, turning the ball over darn near 16 times per contest for VMI. Even though they do have Jackson doing a solid job down low, this team is well outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. Fortunately for them, even though Sam Alexis has been able to do a good job on the glass for Chattanooga, it's not like they're necessarily beastly with that regard either. 157th with regards to their rebound rate. Then you got Brendan Watkins for VMI, who's been able to do a solid job leading the way. 3 assists, 15.5 points, shoots 37.5% from three-point range for a team overall in VMI that shoots about 33% from three-point range. It's nothing great. It's nothing terrible. They've been dealing with a few injuries, most notably to Corey Cotton, who's been out since mid-December. So they've been trying to mix and match a little bit with that regard. It's led to them playing a little bit more down low as you've been able to get 6 boards out of Steven Olawini. He's been able to do a solid job being able to give you some boards. Doesn't necessarily give you a lot of versatility, but does a nice job of being able to hit the glass. This is a Chattanooga team that can be a little bit top-heavy as well. And this Chattanooga team, they themselves have actually been able to rise up quite a bit with regards to their defense. They have given up now 65 points for fear in 2 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for VMI, been a wreck for them recently. They have given up 85 plus points in each of their last 3 games, but they sort of go in cycles. They will give up 100 points one night, and then they'll give up 60, and then they'll give up 90, and then they'll give up 70. I do think that this is one of those games that we are going to see it be a little bit more defense-oriented after last time around. VMI went on the road. They allowed Chattanooga to go 17 of 36 from 3. They gave up 109 points in that game. I do think that VMI is going to have a little bit of a response in the return trip for Dan Earl, so I did set my line at 14. Being able to get 14 after 15, I think we've gone a little bit too far, so I'm going to be taking a look at the points, and I do think that for Chattanooga, they're still going to be able to hit quite a few threes. I do think that they're doing for a little bit of regression here. I do think that VMI guards the arc a little bit better. So going to be taking a look at the under semi-total 156 and the points with VMI. 757, 758 on the betting board. It is UW Milwaukee on the road facing off against Youngstown St. Youngstown St is a favorite of 9 to 10 points. Your total on this game is 156 after 157. I say Youngstown St is a 10.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. Youngstown St not quite as good offensively as they were last season, but still a top 80 team in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Going against a UW Milwaukee team that has ascended into the top 100 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. The problem that you've got for this UW Milwaukee team is that Casper the Friendly Ghost appears to be their defensive coordinator, as his team is outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 40 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. You've got a team that does a relatively okay job on the glass, as you've got BJ Freeman, Faison Fields, Kentrell Pullian, these 3 guys combining for about 16.5 rebounds per game. Freeman has been your main man in terms of generating offense, 18 points, 4.5 assists for a UW Milwaukee team that has really sped things up recently. They turned the ball over 12.5 times per contest. That's not bad, but they go up against a Youngstown St team that is much improved on defense this season. This is now a top 85 team in Youngstown St in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, coming off of a little bit of a rough one against Fort Wayne. But this Youngstown St team, if you look at them as a whole, they have been able to really rise rise up with regards to this defense. They have now given up 71 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 6 games, and it is a Youngstown St team that I think is going to be able to do a solid job down low. Each of your top 3 scorers to give you at least 4.6 rebounds per game. You've got DJ Turn It Up Burns, who's been able to do a nice job with about 10 boards, 12 points per game. This team is not quite what they are 3-point shooting from a season ago this year, but that said, you've had Ziggy Reed shoot about 43.5% from the outside, 14 points, 4.5 boards per game. This team does a nice job of being able to take care of the ball as well. They're turning the ball over only about 11 to 11.5 times per game in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis at home. Youngstown St, a top 15 team in all of college basketball, and they face off against the UW Milwaukee team that they're just not a bunch that generates a lot of turnovers. I will say Youngstown St pretty average with the way that they generate turnovers, but UW Milwaukee 273rd in all of college basketball with this regard. And this is a Youngstown St team that they can get gashed quite a bit from 3-point range at home. They do allow opponents to shoot about 40.5% from 3-point range, but this is a UW Milwaukee team that they're very inconsistent with regards to their 3-point shooting, because while you've got BJ Freeman, who's able to give you those 18 plus points per contest, shoots 39% from 3. Oh no, this team shoots 33% from distance. Of your top 7 scorers, only 2 guys shoot above 28.5% from 3, so I don't think that UW Milwaukee going to quite unearth the kryptonite they've got with this Youngstown St team, but what I do think is that you're going to see this UW Milwaukee team give up quite a few points, recognize that they come in having given up 71 points for fear in regulation in each of their last 4 games, but Youngstown St has been very efficient with their offense. They do a nice job taking care of the ball. They've gotten to at least 78 points in each of their last 5 games, so I do think that Youngstown St is going to be able to take advantage of this UW Milwaukee team and play some very efficient, good offense. So I did set my total at a 160.5. I'm looking at the over on 157, and want to lay up to 10 with the Youngstown St. Set them as a 10.5 point favorite, 759, 760 on the betting board. Monmouth plays those two, William and Mary. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, but you get both, along with 9.5 points with the William and Mary tribe, and your totals between 143 and 143.5, and I'm going to be taking the points with America's favorite tag team. I set William and Mary as an 8.5 point underdog. Now for William and Mary, this defense has been wretched. They are outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, truly getting cooked from 3-point range, and this is a Monmouth team that has Xander Rice, who's one of the best pure scorers in all of college basketball. 21.5 points, 3 assists, shoots 36.5% from 3 for a Monmouth team that overall they are able to shoot 36.5% from the outside. This is a Monmouth team, though, that you've got your question marks with them down low. Nika Kutnetovsky, hopefully you said that correctly, along Jack Collins, they've been able to give you a combined about 14 rebounds per game, but other than that, you really don't have a ton, and this is a Monmouth team that is relatively top-heavy as well. Outside of your main few scorers, you just don't have a lot of reliable options for Monmouth. They are 242nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Now, William and Mary is only about 214th with this regard, but this is a William and Mary team that has been able to get quite a bit out of Chase Lowe, who's able to go low and is able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. He, along with Glenn Dorsey, Trey Moss, have done a nice job as a trio of being able to give you about 40 points per contest. Dorsey is shooting 39% from the outside, and this is a Monmouth team that they are going to allow some open looks from the outside. With Monmouth, in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, they're currently clocking in 212th with that regard, and I will say this for William and Mary, what I think is going to be able to keep them lively in this game, because their defensive metrics are much better when they're at home. They're giving up 10.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home. Opponents shoot about 33.2% from 3-point range at home compared to 38% in a roadside shoot score environment, but this William and Mary team scores the exact same amount of points per possession in a roadside shoot score environment rather than when they are at home. This going up against a Monmouth team that is a little bit better with their defense when they are at home, but that said, this William and Mary offense has been able to travel, so I do think that despite the fact that this is going to be a low possession game, that you're going to be able to get some points in this spot. I did set my total at 144.5, line at the over. It's a William and Mary team that's only turned the ball over 11 times per contest. Both of these teams not generating a lot of turnovers, so even though you don't get a ton of possessions, you're going to get clean possessions. That you've got a William and Mary team that has also been allowing 76 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, while this is a bunch in Monmouth that they've been able to do a solid job being able to get to at least 80 points in 3 of their last 5 games, so looking at the over. But with Monmouth, going to set them as an 8.5 point favorite. I do think that they're going to give up the arc a little bit in this spot, and that'll keep William and Mary lively. So we'll take 9 plus here with William and Mary, and going to be taking a look at the over. 761, 762 on the betting board. Stony Brook hits the road face-off against Elon, and Elon is a home underdog of 3.5 to 4 points. Your total on this game between 145 and 145.5. Set my line at 3, so here at 3.5 to 4, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Elon. It's an Elon defense that they leave a whole heck of a lot of something to be desired. Another team as well outside the top 3 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and very fascinating with Elon. They're actually allowing opponents to shoot 36.8% from 3 at home compared to 32.5% in a roadside shoot current environment, but they go up against the Stony Brook team that they are also very much giving up the arc. 295th is Stony Brook in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, balloons at 39.4% when they are away from home. Now, the Stony Brook team has been able to get some solid contributions down low, as Charles Mado has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, along with Andre 3000 Snotty, so they should be able to win that battle against an Elon team in which the whole is rarely greater than the sum of its parts. With Elon, you've essentially got 4 different guys that are able to come in there and are able to give you between 9.8 and 12.2 points per contest, as Sam Sherry is able to give you 4.7 boards, 7 points per game, and then Rob Higgins, TK Simpkins, Max McKinnon, they've all been able to give you between about 11 to 12.5 points per game, and McKinnon, Simpkins, Higgins, they combine for 8.4 assists per contest. You've got McKinnon, who's able to shoot 40% from 3-point range for an Elon team that, as a whole, they're shooting about 36% from 3-point range. It's been coming down a little bit recently, but this is a bunch of, they are able to light it up from 3-point range, and they're going to need to against a Stony Brook team that they are a bunch that is about 225th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They do see a fall off of about 12.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're in a roadside shoot current environment rather than when they are at home. And this is an Elon team that, even though they do have their issues with regards to being able to go down low, they do hit those threes. And when it comes to the Stony Brook team, the biggest key for them is just being able to keep some of their possessions clean like they have been able to all season long. This is an Elon team that they're not amazing at being able to generate turnovers, but they are a team that they've got some relatively active hands. They generate about 6.5 steals per game. Meanwhile, the Stony Brook team, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, top 75 team in all of college basketball. You've got Tyler Stevenson more, so they will give you more with about 15 points, shooting 40.5% from 3-point range, and then got a lot of guys that they do just make those nice contributions. Aaron Clark, 13 points, shoots about 34% from 3. You've got a 39.5% 3-point shooter in Jared Frey, who's been able to give you about 7 or so points per contest. Has been a little bit inconsistent recently, but it has been a Stony Brook team that has really not been able to click on all cylinders recently with regards to their offense in regulation since their game against UNC Wilmington went to overtime, 72 points or fewer in regulation in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for this Elon team, it has been wobbly for them as well. They have scored 72 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So, an interesting circumstance. I do think that this is going to be a game close enough for late game fouling. Both of these teams certainly have been giving up the arc, but I did set my total 145. Neither of these teams really playing at warp speed, and both of these teams have been less than impressive with regards to their offense recently. So here to 145.5, that is my buy point on the under. And with Elon, won't take anything north of 3 with them. 763, 764 on the betting board. Wright State is going to be playing us to Detroit. Detroit is an underdog of 18.5 to 19 points, and your total on this game going to be getting it anywhere between a 159.5 to a 160.5. I set my total at a 161. I'm looking at the over as for Detroit. I don't know if they're going to be able to do their part with this total, but if they can't do it against Wright State, they're not going to be able to do it against anyone, because with Wright State, they are outside the top 325 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But this is a Wright State team that is absolutely cooking on offense. They're shooting as a collective north of 38% from 3-point range, and they get the gift of going up against one of the worst defenses you're going to find in all of college basketball. Detroit, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 358th in all of college basketball. Now Detroit not playing at a very up-tempo pace here, well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, but man, they have just been giving up points upon points because they get completely gashed from 3-point range. They can't hit the glass whatsoever. Eduardo Del Cadilla is the only guy on the roster that really gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. They're outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. Now they have to go up against a Wright State team that is shooting 38.3% from 3-point range. Now we'll say this, Wright State is actually shooting 34% from 3 at home, north of 40% in a roadside shoot-to-court environment, but but against a team like Detroit, I just don't think that those splits matter very much because Detroit is just getting gashed everywhere. As you've got Tanner Holden, Trey Calvin giving you combined about 36.5 points, 7.5 assists per game. Calvin is shooting 44.5% from three-point range, and Wright St, they're shooting 53.5% from the floor. That is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. You've got a Detroit team that now is back with full Jaden Stone, so their offense has been a little bit better recently as he supplies 20 points, 5.5 boards, and the 30% three-point shooting doesn't sound good, but it's better than most of the other guys on the team, as among players are averaging at least 2 points per game. He, along with Donovan Totley, are the only two players on the roster shooting above 27.8% from three-point range. It is not good. Marcus Sankersley been able to give you about 15 points per contest, but this Detroit team is a skid mark on the underpants of college basketball. And for this Detroit team, they just can't stop giving up points. The last time this Detroit team gave up fewer than 75 points in a game, you have to go all the way back to January 4th, and this team has now given up at least 75 points in 9 out of their last 10 games. This is Wright St team that they themselves have allowed each of their last 5 opponents to be able to get to 76 points. Then again, they have been able to reach at least 77 points in every one of those games themselves, and this Wright St team, they're just an absolute bulldozer with regards to their offense. They have been held below 75 points one time since December 2nd. So in their last 15 games, they've gone to at least 75 points in all but one of them. I think that they are going to completely rip this terrible Detroit defense apart. I set my total at 161. I'm looking at the over. For Detroit, they're 0-24, and they're going to be going to 0-25. I set my line at 19. I wouldn't want to lay much more than this, as Wright St, they themselves are going to give up their points, but willing to lay up to 18.5 with Detroit, and I'm looking at this total over. 765, 766 on the betting board. Hampton is going to be playing with Hofstra. The Pride of Hofstra are an 11.5 to a 12-point favorite. Your total is 146.5. I did set my total at 154.5. I'm going to be looking at the over, and a big reason why is that Hofstra's actually averaging 1.8 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than at home. Overall, they're about 133rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but a top 100 offense when they do leave home. Meanwhile, you've got a Hampton team that is currently 344th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are actually giving up more points per possession at home. They are the third worst defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, so that is a big giant issue, giving up 114.9 points per 100 possessions when they are at home. And I will say that for this Hampton team, they are now finally getting back their main scorer from a season ago to be able to fire on all cylinders, as towards the beginning part of the season, Jordan Nesbitt was out of the fold, missed the first 7 games, and you tell that he was not himself when he came back. Now he's really been able to function the way that he did a season ago. He's been able to give the team 14 plus points in 4 of the team's last 5 games. He's sold out 4 plus assists in each of the last 5 contests as well. So he's been able to do a nice job. He'll be able to set up some offense last year, gave the team more like 15 points per contest, and he's now been able to return to that form. Meanwhile, you've got Tyrese Mullen down low, who's been able to give you about 14.5 points, 9 boards per contest. He's not a guy that's really going to be giving you a lot of stretchability or anything like that, but does a relatively solid job down low. And then Tristan Maxwell has been able to give you about 3 assists to 2 turnovers per game, going up against a bunch in Hofstra that is 249th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and it's 193rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. This Hofstra team, well outside the top 275 with regards to their rebound rate, as you've been able to have Darlison Dunbar, Tyler Thomas be able to combine for 40 points per contest, while Juan Carlos has been very good at being able to manufacture some good offense. 6.2 assists, a 2.8 turnovers per game, shooting 35% from 3, while Dunbar shoots about 41% from the outside. This is a Hampton team that they themselves are going to be giving up their open looks from three-point range. They are 274th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. So I do certainly think that you're going to get points that are going to be very, very plentiful in this game. I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over, and I do think that for this Hampton team, being able to get a little bit more out of Nesbitt, that is going to be able to keep them a little bit more lively than expected in this game. So I did set my line at a 12.5. I'm seeing this line at 11.5 to 12. This was an opener of 12, so this is a max I'm willing to lay, just because I do think that Hofstra is going to be able to kick it into mock turbo, and this is just a Hampton team that, well, I do think that they are going to be able to get theirs on offense. Man, this is one of the most unsightly defenses at home in all of college basketball. Plus, I do expect Bryce Washington, who's only been able to give you about 5.5 points per contest, to be able to rise up for this Hofstra team as the season goes along. It is a Hofstra team that they themselves have actually given up now 71 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, it is a Hampton team that they've been a little bit stuck in the mud themselves on offense, scoring 74 or fewer in each of their last 3 games. I do expect a little bit of an explosion in this affair from a pair of teams that have been lacking with regards to their defense. So looking at the over in the spot, and with Hofstra, want to lay up to 12 points with them. 767, 768 on the betting board. Towson is going to be playing against Delaware. The Blue Hens of Delaware are underdogs of 3 to 4 points. Totals between 134.5 and 135. I did set Towson as a favorite of 4 points. The opener was 4, so now that we're getting down to 3, 3.5, wouldn't want to lay much more than the 3 to 3.5, but I'm going to be willing to lay that number. This Towson team is a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate, and I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job of holding up in this affair. When it comes to Delaware, this team is about 125th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been better this year than they were a season ago, but the fear that you do have with this team is that they are going to have a little bit of difficulty going up against a Towson team that has been a much better team at being able to guard the arc at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. Overall for the Towson team, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, it's 102nd in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.1% from 3-point range when they are at home. Now for Towson, they've had their issues with regards to being able to make their own shots, which is a big reason why I'm going to be taking a look at the under. I did set my total at a 130, but you've had Tyler Tejada be a little bit better for this unit. He's supplying 9 points, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, though. For this Towson team, among their top 5 scorers, you only have one of them that is shooting above 33.5% from 3-point range, and that'd be Charles May, who's been able to supply 12 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but Charles Thompson, him being able to give you a block and a half, 7.5 rebounds per game is big. Couple that with the fact that Nenda Tark, who was out of the fold for the first 10 games of the season, he's come in and he's done a nice job of being able to manufacture some turnovers. He is generating about 1.8 steals per game against a Delaware team that overall they're solid at being able to take care of the ball. About 10.4 turnovers per game. They shoot about 35.5% from 3 with Gerald Drumgoole along with Calvin Riley combined for about 23 points per game. It's just all about can Jair Davis be able to bust through for this team. He has been the main man for Delaware, supplying 18.5 points, 7.5 boards, doesn't shoot it well from 3-point range, but is able to get other guys involved. You've got someone like a Jelon Trent giving you 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 9 points per contest, but I do think that overall, the defense of Towson, which has really been on point recently, this is a Towson team that they have now given up 67 points of fear in 4 out of their last 5 games. I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job against a Delaware team that they themselves have been a little bit of a rocket ship on offense, 80 plus points in 3 out of their last 4 games, but it's been a little bit inconsistent with regards to this Delaware team, as in the 2 games in their last 5 that they did not get to 80, they scored 67 and 56 points respectively. They're a little bit of a go with the flow team. If you play fast, they'll play fast. If you play slow, they'll play slow, and I do think that Towson is going to be able to get their style in this one, so it is a circumstance where I did set my line at 4. I am going to be willing to lay up to 3.5 with Towson, and with regards to this total, did set it at a 130, so looking at the under and going to be willing to lay with Towson. 769, 770 on the betting board. Robert Morris is going to be playing us UW Green Bay. UW Green Bay, a 1 to 1.5 point underdog with your total between 137.5 to 138. I'm going to be looking at UW Green Bay on the money line. I did set them as a 2-point favorite with this UW Green Bay team. It's not the world's greatest offense by any stretch of the imagination, but they are able to rise up quite a bit more with Noah Reynolds being one of the better do-it-all mid-major players in all of college basketball. UW Green Bay up to about 166th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. We'll say this, they are generating about 14.7 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home, but this gentleman and Mr. Reynolds has been able to give you about 3.5 boards, 4.5 assists, 19 points per game. He is the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 8.7 points per game, but UW Green Bay now shooting a collective about 35% from 3-point range. You've got a trio of guys, Foster Wonders, Elijah Jones, David Douglas Jr., that are all ancillary guys for Reynolds. They're all shooting north of 40% from 3-point range, and this is a Robert Morris team that they are very susceptible to giving up the long ball. Robert Morris, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 262nd in all of college basketball, allowing opponents at home to shoot darn near about 35% from 3-point range, and for Green Bay, they shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range at home, nearly 35.5% from 3-point range away from home. So good consistency there going up against a Robert Morris team that they've had their problems holding on to the ball. Really, both of these teams have. UW Green Bay outside the top 2 are with regards to total possessions per game. Robert Morris, a relatively mid-tempo team, and UW Green Bay, they do turn the ball over about 12.3 times per contest. Meanwhile, for Robert Morris, this is a bottom 75 team with regards to ball security, 14 turnovers per game, as you've had Justice Williams be able to supply the team with 13 points, 2.5 assists, but he also gives you about 2.5 turnovers per game. Marquise Hastings, he's got good versatility. 8.5 boards, 15 points per game on 36.5% three-point shooting, but he's also someone that turns the ball over about 2.5 times per contest, as well as Stephon Walker, Marquise Hastings combined for 14 rebounds. Should allow Robert Morris to be able to win that battle down low. This is a UW Green Bay team that, other than Elijah Jones, you really don't have anyone else that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. That is one of the main issues that you do have with this team, but UW Green Bay, they've done a really good job of taking away the three-point arc. UW Green Bay, 26th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and this UW Green Bay team, they don't do a whole lot flashy, but they've done a nice job being able to D up about 187th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Robert Morris team that is well inside the top 200 with this regard, and it's not like Robert Morris is playing a whole lot better defense at home rather than on the road, only giving up 4.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road, 311th in the country with this regard. I did set my total at a 138. It's going to be a low possession game, but I do think that UW Green Bay going to be able to hit some threes and be able to get the job done outright. I'm looking at UW Green Bay on the money line, and I'm going to also be taking a look at this total over as well. 771, 772 on the betting board. Memphis hits the road to face off against Temple. We give our ode to Lane Kiffin go Owls, as Temple does find themselves as 6.5 to 7.0 underdogs. Total on this game is 149. Now, I am completely out on this Memphis team, but even in this circumstance, I'm going to be willing to lay with Memphis. I did set them as a favorite of 8 points. What is very ironic about Memphis is that all but one of their covers have come away from home this far this season. They've been a far better team when they've been away from Memphis at being able to cover the spread rather than at home. This is a Memphis squad that has certainly been getting tattooed in terms of their defense. 216th in all of college basketball. With regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, if you take a look at points allowed on a per possession basis, Memphis outside the top 125 with this regard, but they're going up against a Temple team that they're shooting less than 31.5% from three-point range. Temple's been able to do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball, but shooting less than 40% from the floor. And for Temple, 194th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So you do have quite a few issues with regards to this Owls team. For Temple, they just need to find that go-to scorer for this team because they've been just a very rudderless bunch. You've been able to get some relatively good facilitation out of Heisier Miller, who's been able to give you about 15 points, 5 assists per game, but really other than Micah Piccarelli, who's been able to shoot in the mid to high 30s from three-point range, you just don't have anyone that's able to go bombs away from the outside. And for this Memphis team, what has been leading to this team just really cratering recently has been that bad defense. Now, they rose up in that game against Wichita State. Neither team was able to get to 65 points in that game, but prior to that, they had given up 74 plus points in pretty much 8 out of their last 11 games, and you do have the best scorer on the floor on the side of Memphis and Davy Jones, who's able to give you about 21.5 points, 6.5 boards. He's shooting 38% from three-point range. The question is, can these ancillary pieces be able to step up? Can you get a little bit more out of someone like a Nick Jourdain, who's actually come over from Temple, giving you about 6.5 points per contest, shoots about 50% from three-point range for a Memphis team that you'd like to see them cut down on the turnovers. They're turning the ball over about 13.5 times per game. They're shooting about 35.5% from distance, going up against a Temple team that they are going to give it up from the outside, but they're not an atrocious three-point shooting defense with Temple. They allow opponents to shoot about 33.5% from three. It's been actually much worse for them at home, as at home they allow opponents to shoot 37.5% from three. That compares to about 30.5% from three-point range in a road/shoot court environment. I do think that the best facilitator in this game is also on the side of Memphis, with Javon Quinterly being able to give you about 5 assists per contest. It's been interesting to watch Nequan Tomlin be able to try to integrate himself with his team, 10.5 points, 6 boards, but ever since he's been in the fold, even though he's giving you some relatively good contributions, it's actually been a little bit of a negative overall for this Memphis team, so it's a very interesting spot. You've got a Memphis team that's just bleeding points. You've got a Temple team that has been rough with their defense, but Temple just has not been able to put the ball in the basket outside the top 250 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, so it is a circumstance that something's got to give. I did set my total 152 with the way that Memphis has been playing, the way that Memphis is in the top 40 with regards to total possessions per game. I do think you get a high scoring affair, and you do have a Temple team that they themselves have allowed at least 75 points in 3 of their last 5 games, so looking over. And with Memphis, willing to lay up to 7.5 with them. 773, 774 on the betting board. Northeastern is on the road. They're facing off against Campbell. Campbell is a 1.5 to a 2.0 underdog. Total on this game in between 136.5 to 137. And with this Campbell bunch, I did set them as a underdog of 2.5 points. So here at a 1.5 to 2, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Northeastern. Northeastern has their warts, there's no question about it. But what this team does a really good job of is knifing the ball inside. They are a top 25 team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage from from within the three-point arc. This Northeastern team certainly is going to have their turnover issues. They've been turned the ball over north of 13 times per contest, but I do love what Chris Jordy is able to bring to the table for this team. He's been able to supply them with 13.5 points, 7 boards, has been trying to show a little bit of versatility, shooting threes for the first time in his career, only shooting about 25% from the outside, but that has given this team a different element as he's had a double-double in now 3 of the team's last 4 games, and for Campbell, I think that that's going to be very hard for them to go up against. You've got Anthony De La Rosa for this Campbell team. He's done a nice job of being able to be that Mr. Do-It-All sort of player for this team. 17.5 points, 6.5 boards. He throws in there a pair of assists per game as well as Laranitas. Visterius has been able to also give you about 4 boards, 11 points. He shoots about 42.5% from three-point range as a 6'6" do-it-all sort of player for a Campbell team that, with regards to their rebound rate, they're about 274th in all of college basketball. That leaves something to be desired. Meanwhile, Northeastern is a top 65 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that Doherty is really that do-it-all guy on the glass. So they've been able to do a nice job of being able to rebound by committee. It is a Northeastern team that certainly is going to be giving up its looks from three-point range as well. Northeastern, well outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, as for Northeastern, they are overall about 355th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, actually allowing a better percentage from three when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. Meanwhile, Campbell has cut teams off from the arc, allowing opponents to shoot only about 28.3% from three-point range at home, but this is a Northeastern team that they really butter their bread down low, and I do think that they're going to be able to get the job done doing so in this circumstance. I said Northeastern as a 2.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to lay up to 2 with them, and did something total 136.5. You've got a pair of teams that are outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, but Northeastern well outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a Campbell team that is certainly leaving something to be desired defensively as well. They're about 211th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and I'm right now seeing a 137 out there, 137 or higher, looking at the under. 775, 776 on the betting board. Iowa hits the road to face off against Penn State. Penn State is a 1.5 point home underdog. Total on this game is 161.5. I did set my total 159.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. This has not been the same Iowa offense that we have seen in past years, and with Iowa, you always know that this is going to be a bunch that's going to be a bit different when they are at home with regards to their offense rather than when they are on the road. For Iowa, they are about 153rd in the country with regards to three-point shooting percentage, shooting about 35.5% from three-point range when they're at home in a roadside shoot court environment. This does slip to about 32.7% from the outside, and Iowa still 22nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they only score about 13.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're in a roadside shoot court environment as well. Going up against Penn State team that they do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers. Top 30 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now they do go up against an Iowa team that one forte that they do have is that they are able to do a really good job of just being able to take care of the ball and not turn it over, as Iowa's turnover percentage is in the top 50 in all of college basketball in terms of not turning it over. And then for Iowa, this team is going to be looking quite a bit down low to Ben Krikke. Ben Krikke has been able to be really that main constant for this offense. He's done a nice job being able to supply the team with about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, chipping in there 15.5 points per game along Tony Perkins, who's been able to give you 15.5 points, 4 assists per contest. But I do think that Penn State is going to be able to pull that off on their home floor just because this Iowa team is not the same when they are away from home. And I do think that this Penn State team, even though they are going to get barbecued down low, they do have one guy in Qudus Wahab who's going to be able to help them out with that battle down low, as Wahab has been able to give you about 8 rebounds, 9.5 points per game, chips in there a block and a half per contest. This is a Penn State team that they certainly do gamble for turnovers, which is why they do have such a bad rebound rate. They are clocking in 329th in all of college basketball, while Iowa does leave something to be desired on the glass. They certainly should be able to win that battle at about 208th. That said, you've been able to have Zach Hicks be able to give you about 7 points. He's been able to give you some contributions from the outside. Kanye Cleary has been able to shoot about 38% from three-point range in his own right. Now, I will say for Iowa, if there's been one thing they've done an okay job of on defense, they're about 173rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 30.3% from the outside. But I do think that Penn State going to be able to hold up just enough here with them being a top 40 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I do think that Penn State is going to be able to rise up a little bit with their defense. The way to be able to knock off this Penn State team is from the inside, and I just don't think Iowa has enough to be able to do so. So did make Penn State the 1.5 point favorite, looking at them on the money line, and set by total 159.5, so also looking under. 777, 778 on the betting board. UNC Wilmington plays us to Drexel. Drexel does find themselves as 3.5 to 4 point underdogs. Total is 137.5. Been very interesting to watch this Drexel team because they had a stretch where they were just scoring 70 plus on the regular in like 5 out of 7 games in CAA play after they were just an absolute wreck with their offense to begin the season, but it does feel like they're starting to get back to their defensive roots. This is still a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, so this is a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at the under for UNC Wilmington. They do a supreme job of taking care of the ball, a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but for Wilmington, it's not like they're amazing with their 3-point shooting percentage. They're about 219th in all of college basketball, only shooting about 31% from the outside. What has really been the main form of offense for them has been Tarzarian White. Tarzarian White has been absolutely incredible, being able to supply the team with in that neighborhood of about 6 rebounds, 20 points per contest, and then he's able to get the other guys are able to bomb it from 3-point range above. KJ Jenkins has been able to shoot north of 37% from 3-point range. He's been a nice double-figure scorer for this team. I do think that UNC Wilmington is going to be able to take hold of this game, despite down low, probably losing that battle, as Amari Williams has been able to do a nice job being able to supply the team with 9 rebounds, 11 points per contest, and this has been a Drexel team that all season long has done a very nice job of being able to guard that 3-point line. As for Drexel, they're allowing opponents to shoot 30.5% from 3-point range, as 33rd in all of college basketball, but that does drop off quite a bit when they are away from home. On the road, they are allowing opponents to shoot closer to 33.5% from the outside, going against a UNC Wilmington team that they've had their difficulties guarding the 3-point arc. That goes to about 34% at home, 36.5% in a roadside shoot court environment, and Justin Moore on the flip side for this Drexel team has been able to give you more with about 13 points per contest, but I do think that UNC Wilmington going to be able to run some very good, efficient offense. This is a Drexel team that, after they had their just very nice heater on offense in the month of January, does feel like they're starting to cool down just a little bit more, as this has been a team that's been held to 67 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, Wilmington, they have found a way to get to at least 77 points in each of their last 5 games, so good old situation of something's got to give. I did set my total at a 134, so going to be diving in on the under, and with Wilmington, willing to lay up to 5.5 points with them, set them as a 6-point favorite, 779, 780 on the betting board. Oakland, it's a road face-off against Northern Kentucky, and Northern Kentucky is an underdog of a point. Total on this game is 144.5 with Northern Kentucky. I did set them as an underdog of 1.5 points, so here at the 1, it's a max I'm willing to lay with Oakland, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Oakland. This Oakland team has actually been a significantly better defense when they've been away from home rather than when they're at home. For Oakland, they're actually giving up 10.6 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than at home. One of the most stark splits that you're going to find in all of college basketball. And for this Oakland bunch, they've gotten Trey Towson going, being able to supply 17.5 points, 7 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. This is an Oakland team that they've honestly probably had some of their best results on the road. They've already knocked off Xavier when they were in a roadside shoot court environment in that game. This has been a very interesting year for them, to say the least, going up against a Northern Kentucky team that they're short-handed in the backcourt. Sam Vincent has been out the last 7 games. He's been really one of the better do-it-all sort of mid-major guards in all of college basketball, supplying the team with 2.5 steals, 5 rebounds, 13.5 points per game for another Kentucky team as well, outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. They've only got one guy now that's able to give you north of 5 boards per contest in Trey Robinson, who stands right around about 6'6". He's been able to give the team 9.5 points, 6 boards, and Marquise Warwick is still a nice go-to scorer who's able to give you 19 points per game, but Northern Kentucky is shooting 30.7% from 3-point range. You don't have anyone that's averaging north of 4.2 points per contest that's shooting above 33.5% from 3, so even though this is an Oakland team that's well outside the top 250 with opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they're probably not going to get too gashed up with that regard. Now, when it comes to Northern Kentucky, they're actually 70th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this Northern Kentucky team, a top 30 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they also give the ball away with 13 turnovers per game, with them being well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. That's a bit of an issue, and not that this Oakland defense is beastly by any stretch of the imagination, but if you take a look at them recently in regulation, because the UW Milwaukee game went to double overtime, they've actually now given up 72 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, going against a Northern Kentucky team that they themselves have given up 72 or less in 3 out of their last 5 games. So I do think that this is a very unique circumstance, and one where I do think that Oakland is going to be able to do a relatively solid job on defense. Now, did set my total at 145.5. I do think that this is a nip and tuck game. I do think that Oakland going to be able to find a way to be able to generate some points, and I do think that when Northern Kentucky, they're going to be able to turn their steals into offense as well. So I'm going to be taking a look at the over. I also do like Oakland to be able to get the job done on the road. Set my line at a 1.5, so want to lay the 1 with Oakland and looking at the over. 781, 782 on the betting board. Middle Tennessee is going to be in the road face-off against Liberty. Liberty finds themselves as big-time favorites in this game of 12.5 to 13 points. Total on this game between 129.5 and 130. Did set my total 127.5. I'm going to be looking under with Liberty. This has been a squad that has been a little bit more leaky with their defense than expected, but now they get to go up against a Middle Tennessee team as well outside the top 300 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, shooting below 31% from three-point range. And this Liberty team is just a different animal when they're at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-corner environment. Liberty is giving up about 11 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. And for Middle Tennessee, this has been a relatively solid team in terms of their defense, with about 150th being their mark in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it is a Middle Tennessee team that is 130th in the country. Now, they do experience quite a bit of drop-off when they're away from home. They are giving up 13.4 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-corner environment rather than when they are at home. And when it comes to Middle Tennessee, they are certainly giving it up from three-point range when they do leave their friendly confines. As for Middle Tennessee, they allow opponents to shoot 37% from three-point range away from home. That is more around about 29.5% from three when they are at home. So big-time issues there. And with Middle Tennessee, the question becomes, who in the heck is going to be able to put the ball in the basket for them? Because they just have not been able to find that consistent shooting all season long. Jared Coleman-Jones has been able to give the team down low about 7 rebounds per game, but for this Middle Tennessee team, you've been able to have him be your main three-point shooter at about 39%, and he's supposed to be your main low-post presence. Nobody else on the roster shoots above 35% from three-point range. Justin Porter is able to give you about a steal, 13 points per contest, but he only shoots about 30% from three-point range. Meanwhile, for Liberty, this team just lives to be able to shoot those threes. They shoot about 36% as a collective. Kai Rhodey, Keaton Menethy, they've been able to combine for about 26 points per game, 5 assists, with Menethy shoots about 41% from the outside, while Brody Pebbles has been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, supplying the team with 10.5 points per game. Liberty is not going to be necessarily beastly on the glass, but neither is this Middle Tennessee team. Middle Tennessee, well outside the top 200 in terms of their rebound rate. Meanwhile, for Liberty, even though they don't necessarily have those just truly dominant big men, their rebound rate at home is in the top 100 in all of college basketball, and they leave home. It's actually one of the worst in all of college basketball, but I do think that the friendly confines for Liberty are going to be able to help them win this game, and I do think that Middle Tennessee, once again, going to be held down with their offense. I set my total 127.5, diving under, and with Liberty, going to be willing to lay up to 12.5 to 13 points with them, set them as a 13.5 point favorite. 783, 784 on the betting board. Ryder, it's a road face-off against Fairfield. Fairfield is a 4-point favorite. Your total is 149 to 149.5 with Fairfield. I did set them as a favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. Ryder has been able to rise up quite a bit in terms of their three-point shooting, but they're still a team that's well below average in terms of being able to make their outside shots nationally. And with this Ryder team, it has been a little bit of an issue for this team in terms of they themselves being able to guard the three-point arc. Ryder is a top 125 team with regards to their rebound rate, but they do allow opponents to shoot about 33.5% from three. That's 162nd in all of college basketball. They face off against a Fairfield team that has been really solid ever since they made the coaching change from Jay Young. Jay Young was canned weeks before the start of the season, but for Fairfield, they only allow opponents to shoot 32% from three. That's the top 95 mark in all of college basketball, and they become a top 140 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Bryson Gudine has been able to shoot above 45% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 13 plus points per contest. You don't necessarily have a ton down low for this Fairfield team. That is a battle that they're going to be losing. This Ryder team has been one of your better rebound rate teams in mid-major college basketball. Meanwhile, it is a Fairfield team that they are about 293rd in the country with regards to their rebound rate, but Luis Bleachmore has now been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and you've got Mr. Versatile and Jasper Floyd. 6 boards, 5 assists, 9.5 points per game. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from three-point range, but he just checks so many boxes for this team, and he's been able to do a nice job generating 11 turnovers in the team's last 4 games as well. Going up against a Ryder team that down low, you've got Tariq Ingram, who's been able to give you 6.5 boards per contest, along with Mervyn James, TJ Weeks. These two guys are your main two scorers. Weeks, 10.5 points, 6.5 boards on 37.5% three-point shooting. James is shooting 40.5% from three, 19 points, 6.5 boards out of him. But outside those two guys, you really don't have a lot of pop from the outside. You've been able to get about 3 assists in that neighborhood, about 34% three-point shooting out of Corey McKeithen, but I don't have a lot of confidence in him against the backcourt of Fairfield that has been so good and has been able to really launch it from three-point range. And you do have a Rider team that has been all over the place in terms of their defense. In their last 5 games, they have given up 78, 57, 62, 50, and 94 points. Meanwhile, this Fairfield team, they've done a good job getting to at least 76 points so far in their last 5 games. So I do think that you get a little bit of a higher scoring affair. I did set my total at a 147. I do think that with the 149, we've gone just a little bit too far with the way that Fairfield is guarding from three-point range. I do think that they get the job done at home. Set my line at 7, willing to lay the number, and looking at the under. 785, 786 on the betting board. Maris, it's a red face-off against Siena. Siena is a home underdog, 4.5 to 5 points. On this game is 126 to 126.5. With Maris, I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points, so it's a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay the number now. With Maris, this has been one of the most grody offenses in all of college basketball. They are outside the top 300 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but you know, as Elson is in the bottom 100 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, that'd be Siena. Siena has just been turning the ball over left and right. Like Sarah Lee's Bakery is jealous of the turnover production that we are seeing from Siena. So bunch has been inside the top 300 with regards to ball security. Now, they've gotten back Sean Drew-Gordon, who's been their main scorer. He's been able to supply the team with north of 16 points per contest and has been in and out of the fold all season long, whether that be injury, whether that be the 2-time transfer rule. So this team has been able to get no chemistry whatsoever. And now that he's back out there on the floor, their other main scorer, Michael Ely, he has been out of the fold. He did return in the last game against Mount St. Mary's at 24 points, but also had 5 turnovers, and the team still had only 61 points when he was out there. This team has just not been able to get on track all season long. The one thing that Siena has been able to do a solid job of, they're a top 175 team with regards to rebound rate, as you've got a pair of guys in Greg Imaruju along with Michael Ivaberau. Hopefully I said that correctly. I always screw up that name. They've been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game, while Drew Gordon has been able to give you about 21.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Then again, though, you've got a Maris team that has been able to really lock it down with their defense. A top 30 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They really take away the three-point arc from you. Now, Maris, a relatively average team with regards to their rebound rate, and if you do have trepidation with Maris being able to close out this game, they do shoot just 65.5% at the free throw line, and each of their top 5 scorers, they all shoot 65% or less at the free throw line. That is quite concerning, but you have been able to get some relatively good production when he's been out there, and Jackson Price was missing for a little bit of time due to injury, but he's their main three-point shooter at 44%, and he's been able to give the team a combined 15.9 rebounds in the last 2 games, so he's been pretty productive. You've been able to get some nice production as well. Josh Passarelli, who's now been able to supply the team with about 11 points. He shoots in the high 30s from three-point range as well. All in all, it is a Maris team that actually does shoot about 35% from 3, and they go up against the Siena team that, well, they've been incredibly rough with regards to their offense. I don't think this defense has been a whole heck of a lot better for them as well. Siena, 312th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, only giving up 4.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home, rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment. And I do think a Maris team that they themselves have just not been able to get online with regards to their offense. They're going to be able to find a way to be able to exploit this Siena defense that has been giving up a lot from the outside and be able to get this one done. I did set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number in. I did set my total 124.5. Even when you've had Drew Gordon along the Ely out there in the fold, this has been a Siena team that has just been held down with their offense, 52 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it's a Maris team that, for all the struggles that they've had on offense, offensively, they've given up north of 72 points in regulation just 3 times all season long. So it is a circumstance where I set my total 124.5, diving under. And with Maris, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 points with them. 787, 788 on the betting board. St. Peter's is on the road facing off against Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac is a favorite in this spot of anywhere between 8.5 to 7.5 total on this game, is 135.5 to 136.5 with Quinnipiac. It made them a 6.5 point favorite. So you're at 7.5, even seeing 8. I'm going to be willing to take those points with St. Peter's. St. Peter's has been rough in terms of their offense, outside the top 250 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. And as a matter of fact, for St. Peter's, their best offense has actually been grabbing second chances. They're a top 45 team in all of college basketball with regards to percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. It's been a St. Peter's team that has been hovering right around 30% with their three-point shooting all season long. But for the St. Peter's team, I do think that they play enough defense to be able to hold in there. It is a Quinnipiac team that, just in watching them, they're 18-4 straight up. They have been absolutely incredible. They just don't quite feel like it, and this is a St. Peter's team that's going to do a good job, in my opinion, of locking them up from three-point range. St. Peter's, a top 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Quinnipiac, they're clocking in 100th, though. For Quinnipiac, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from three-point range at home in a roadside shoot corner environment. that actually drops them more around 31.5%. And for the St. Peter's team, they've been dealing with some injuries of guys being in and out of the fold all season long. They've now got a little bit of an injury to Corey Washington, but Michael Hoagie is now back in the fold as he's been the top rebounder for the team with about 6 boards, 9 points per game. And even though this is not a St. Peter's team that necessarily has a whole bunch of size, even though this is a bunch that they don't necessarily have that one guy that's going to go out there and give you a double-figure amount of rebounds, this has been a team that's been in the top 75 with regards to their rebound rate. With Quinnipiac, they've been about 77, so both of these teams relatively even up on that front as Matt Blahnic has done an incredible job of headlining this Quinnipiac offense with about 18.5 points, shoots 36% from 3, and Quinnipiac is another team that they don't necessarily have that one main guy down low, though. Paul Otino, Amari Tice, they've combined for 14 rebounds, about 23.5 points per game, and this is a Quinnipiac team that does do a good job of being able to hit their free throws. If there is one thing that helps them out in the spot of being able to cover this summer, they shoot 78.5% the free throw line. That's a top 20 mark in all of college basketball, but I do think that for this Quinnipiac team, the 12.5 turnovers might be a little bit costly against the St. Peter's team that they themselves will turn it over, but they also do a nice job being able to rip the ball away. Something else in favor of Quinnipiac is the fact that Savion Lewis, by far the best facilitator in this conference, 7.5 assists to about 3 turnovers per game, so he does a nice job of being able to find guys in space. But I do think that St. Peter's, a team that's well outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, they're going to be able to get their slow, grimy style. This St. Peter's team has been absolutely supreme in the way that they have been able to play defense all season long. The last time that St. Peter's gave up north of 71 points in a game, you have to go all the way back to November. So I do think that Quinnipiac is going to be stuck in the mud. I do think that Quinnipiac gets the job done, but I think that this is a low-scoring slog. I set my total 132.5. I think that St. Peter's gets things slowed down and they hang in there. Looking at the points with St. Peter's and looking at the under. 789, 790 on the betting board. It is Sam Amford on the road facing off against UNC Greensboro. And Greensboro is a favorite of a point. Your total on this game, going to be finding it at a 151 to a 151.5, and for Greensboro, I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on this rather tight line for Greensboro. They got off to a rough start with regards to that defense, but ever since Mykyle Brown-Jones came back in the fold, this team has been vastly different, as Brown-Jones has been continuing to shoot about 50% from three-point range. I do think that it has to wear down at some point, but he's been one of the more incredible mid-major players in all of college basketball. 21 points, 8 boards, shooting 50% from 3-point range. For a Greensboro team that as a whole, they are shooting 39.5% from the outside. Even though Sanford plays at a reckless pace, they play really, really fast. In the top 30 in terms of total possessions per game, they're a team that they do a relatively solid job of being able to just tee up, but they do leave themselves very vulnerable from 3-point range. 307th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Well, Greensboro locks it down with this regard. They are allowing opponents at home to shoot 30.7% from 3-point range. That's a top 100 mark in all of college basketball. Now, despite the fact that Sanford does give up all those threes, they are still a team that is clocking in with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis within the top 125. And for Sanford, this team has been incredible with their offense, 27th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But with Sanford scoring 19.7 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for UNC Greensboro, I do think that they're going to be able to do a pretty rock solid job down low, as Sanford has Anchor, who's maybe about 16 points, 6 rebounds per contest, but when it comes to this Greensboro team, they've been able to get quite a bit more recently out of Jalen Breath. He's 6'8". He's been able to give the team about 6 rebounds per game. When it comes to this UNC Greensboro team, it's all about just really playing even up on the glasses. That has been a little bit of a weakness for them. 203rd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. For Sanford, they're more around 137th, but I do think that with Sanford, them really priding themselves on being able to generate turnovers, going up against a UNC Greensboro team that has done a good job of being able to take care of the ball. Only about 10.5 turnovers per game. Greensboro in the top 50 with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Sanford, a top 40 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's a situation where something's got to give. I do think that for UNC Greensboro, I think they do win out in this battle. I think that they take care of the ball. I do think that they find a way to be able to knife through this Sanford team that has really been giving it up from 3-point range. Yeah, we'll say for this Greensboro team, in 3 out of their last 4 games, they have given up 80 plus points, but that's at one of those games did go to overtime. And for Sanford, they've actually really been able to buckle down on defense in their last few games as well. So a lot has got to give in this one. I did set my total 154.5. I do think that this is going to be a harebrained up-tempo game, and I do think that Greensboro is going to be able to hit a lot of shots to be able to get it done. Set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Greensboro, and I'm going to be taking a look at the over. 791, 792 on the betting board. Iona, it's the road they're facing off against Niagara. Niagara is an underdog of 2.5 points, and your total on this game, you're going to be getting it at a 147.5 to a 148 now with Niagara. I did set them as a favorite of 2 points. I'm going to be looking at them all right on the money line with Niagara. They've been able to do an amazing job of being able to hit their threes all season long. This team is in the top 25 with regards to three-point shooting percentage, really doing it both at home and on the road, shooting 38% as a collective, with Luke Bumbalo along with Ayobeng Mensah being able to combine to shoot about 41% from three. Both of these guys give you about 10.5 points per contest. Other than Harlan Obiana, a 7-footer that has been really your lockdown low-post player for the Niagara team, giving you about 8 rebounds per game among players that are averaging at least 3.5 points per contest. Every one of them shoots at least 34.7% from three-point range, going against an Iona squad that has been one of the best in all of college basketball, being able to generate turnovers. You've got Joel Brown. He's been able to do a good job of being able to generate about 2 steals. He is not necessarily too much of a scorer with about 6 to 7 points per contest, but gives you 3+ assists per game as well. This is an Iona squad, though, that they do gamble a little bit for turnovers. As a result, they do leave themselves susceptible to giving up some threes. 193rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this Niagara team, they are about 236th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage defense, allowing opponents to shoot 38.5% from three-point range at home in a roadside shoot-court environment. That actually slides down to more in that pocket of about 31%. And for Iona, you've been able to have Greg Gecko Gordon. He's been able to do a nice job being able to give you about 15 points, and it's been able to shoot about 34.9% from three-point range, as he's the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game. That is a big-time issue for Iona. They're outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate. They have gotten the 7-footer Osborne Shema back at the full, but he hasn't necessarily given you a lot on the glass. He's given you a little bit in terms of shot blocking, but just hasn't been utilized too much this year. You've been able to have more of your ancillary scores step up in terms of three-point shooting percentage. So Javon Quigley, Alon Jean, Aran Gurin, who have been able to combine to shoot about 45% from three, are supplying the team with a combined about 17.5 points per game. But for Niagara, even though this has been a defense that all season long, it has had its issues, they've been able to rise up quite a bit more recently. If you look at regulation and regulation only, because their game against Penn, that went to overtime, they have been able to do a nice job being able to lock down with 73 points or fewer surrendered in each out of their last 5 games. I do think that they're going to be able to slow things down a little bit more. First time these two teams played, Niagara got it done by kind of 75 to 73, but in that game, Niagara did have to shoot 8 of 17 from 3. Even for them, that's a little bit of an admiration. They also did lose a turnover battle 20 to 7. I think that Iona turns the ball over a little bit more here. Niagara turns the ball over a little bit less as well, but I do think that the result remains the same. I think that Niagara going to be able to get it done in this rather nip and tuck game. I do think that both teams get to 70, but I think both teams just barely get to 70. I set my total at 146. I'm going to be taking a look at the 148 under, and with Niagara, set them as a 2-point favorite, so looking at them on the money line. 793, 794 on the betting board. Jacksonville State plays us to Sam Houston State. Sam Houston State is an underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. Tonight's game is 135, and with Sam Houston State, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. At the 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. Jacksonville State is a top 80 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Sam Houston State, they have had to go through a coaching change with Jason Newton deciding to take the job over at New Mexico State, and it just has been a case where they just have not been able to find their sea legs this season. They're not too bad with regards to their defense, 125th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're going to be looking to be able to have some success on the glass, about 107th in the country with regards to rebound rate. But for Jacksonville State, even though they don't necessarily have that one go-to guy that's able to just completely dominate, give you 10 plus rebounds per game down low, they're actually a team that ranks about 53rd in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and they've got a nice go-to scorer. That'd be Kai Tandy. Tandy has been able to supply about 18 points per contest. This for a Jacksonville State team that they don't shoot it well from three-point range. Jacksonville State as a collective, they're shooting in the neighborhood about 32.5% from three-point range, with Tandy shooting 40% from three, and nobody else on the roster shooting about 34% from the outside. But everyone else does a good job of being able to just chip in there some ancillary production. It's a Jacksonville State team that does turn the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, but they go up against the Sam Houston State team that also turns the ball over about 13 times per game. They shoot a relatively similar 33% from distance, with having a pair of guys in Davion Barnes, along with Lamar Wilkerson, combined to be able to give you about 28 points per contest. You've been able to get 4 assists and some nice versatility out of Jaden Ray, and they've had in and out of the fold Cameron Hefner, but he's been able to come back. He's been able to give the team double figures in each out of the last 2 games, but I do think that for Sam Houston State, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time against the Jacksonville State team that has really done a nice job of being able to guard the three-point arc for Jacksonville State. This team is allowing opponents to shoot only about 32.5% from three-point range. It dips all the way down to 29.5% from three-point range when they're at home. Meanwhile, for Sam Houston State, they do allow opponents to shoot nearly 34% from three away from home, and I do think that Candy is going to be able to take over the game and is going to be able to get Jacksonville State to this victory. I did set my total at a 135, so here at the 135. It's a little bit of wait and see mode. I was seeing some 136s a little bit earlier. If we could get up to a 136, look at under. If we go down to a 134, going to be looking at the over. And with Jacksonville State, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 795, 796 on the betting board. Mount St. Mary's is going to be playing us Manhattan, and Manhattan is an underdog of 9.5 points. Total on this game is 141.5, and with Manhattan, I did set them as a underdog of 11.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Mount St. Mary's. They've had their turnover issues. They're turning the ball over north of 13.5 times per game, but they're also a top 40 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So while they give the ball away, they also do a nice job of being able to take the ball away. And when it comes to Mount St. Mary's, they've been able to get a whole heck of a lot more out of Dakota LeFew. Dakota LeFew has done tremendous work being able to supply the team with about 15 or so points per contest last year, was their main three-point shooter, and he had his turnover issues early on during the season, but now he's been able to dial those in a little bit more, giving you about 4 boards, 4 assists per contest for a Mount St. Mary's team that is in the top 100 nationally with regards to their rebound rate, despite nobody on the roster giving you north of 4.7 rebounds per game. They've just done a really nice job by committee. You've had Joey Cordelia, along with LeFew, Dola Abayo, all be able to give you between about 4 to 4.7 rebounds per game. They've dealt with a few injuries, but they've been able to get a little bit more recently out of those ancillary pieces like a Josh Reeves, who's been able to give you about 7 points, shooting about 33% from three-point range. Flip side, you've got a Manhattan team that has Shaquille Bender, who's been able to go off for about 14 points per contest, but for Manhattan, they're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do shoot 31.5% from three-point range, which that's a little bit of an issue. And when it comes to the turnovers for this Manhattan team, 14.5 per game, that is a bottom 75 mark in all of college basketball, being able to take care of the ball. They have been really having their issues in terms of being able to find that go-to point guard, with Brent Ruppel being out of the fold for much of the season. As a result, they've had to get a lot more than expected out of freshman Jaden Winston, who's been able to give you about 4.5 assists, 8.5 points per game. So it's a circumstance where I do think that Mount St. Mary's going to be able to generate some turnovers, be able to win this game via their defense for a Manhattan team that they themselves have given up 77 plus points in each of their last 5 games. So Manhattan has been rough with their offense, they've been rough with their defense, and for Mount St. Mary's, they've now given up 66 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games to be able to rise up with that regard as well. So this is a spot where I'm going to be willing to lay double figures with Mount St. Mary's. It's set them as an 11.5 point favorite, and Mount St. Mary's now a top 145 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game. They're playing much faster than they did a season ago with Manhattan giving up the points that they have been. I'm going to be looking at the over semi-total at 145.5. 797, 798 on the betting board. UT Rio Grande Valley, it's a road face-off against Stephen F. Austin, and Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin does find themselves as 15.5 to 14.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 149.5. I did set Stephen F. Austin as a 14.5 point favorite. Now that we're getting up to 15.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Grand Valley. Now the Grand Valley, this squad has been turning the ball over a whole heck of a lot, which is bad against a Stephen F. Austin team that's a top 20 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And what I think is most alarming for Grand Valley is the injury that they suffered to Hassan Abdul Hakim. He was really a do-it-all guy, shooting 39.5% from 3, 14 points, a steal and a half, 5 boards, 3.5 assists at 6'8", nice combo player. But for UT Rio Grande Valley, you still have been able to get good facilitation and contributions out of Elijah Elliott. 3 assists, 15 points. He's not a guy that's going to take over the game from three-point range, and that's really what's missing with Abdul Hakim out of the fold, as you really don't have anyone other than Sherman Brashear, who's been able to shoot a ball from three-point range, only gives you about 5.5 points while shooting at 36% from three-point range. But this is also a Stephen F. Austin team that while they do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers, do turn the ball over themselves 16.5 times per game. That's just the style of play that they've got. They're a top 30 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, a bottom 30 team with regards to turnovers committed per possession. And for Stephen F. Austin, they're only shooting about 33.5% from three-point range, with AJ Kujuse being able to give you about 3 assists, 8.5 points per contest. Nana Ati Boasico has been able to give you about 7.5 points per contest as well. You've been able to get some good production out of Latrell Jostle, Day Hall, who both been able to give you double figures, but you've been dealing with injuries with quite a few of these guys. Day Hall has been out of the fold the last few games. Jostle should be good to go on this one, but I know that he's been missing for a little bit of time here in the last few months as well, so that's been a little bit touch and go, as well as a Stephen F. Austin team that, while they do a tremendous job of being able to guard, and they've been able to do a better job this season of being able to guard the three-point arc than they have in past years, going up against Grand Valley team that to start well with, they're just not doing a good job of being able to go bombs away from three-point range. But that said, this is a Stephen F. Austin team that I find it hard for them to be able to win by differential, because they are a team that is 242nd in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and are actually a less effective offense at home, outside the top 275 with regards to points scored per possession when they are at home. Now for Grand Valley, this team is, despite being a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, outside the top 3 and with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. But I do think that you get a lot of turnovers in this game. I think that leads to a lot of easy buckets on both sides, and I do think that for Grand Valley, it's going to be all about knifing the ball inside, and I do think that this rather harebrained and up-tempo style, in which there's going to be a lot of turnovers on both sides, I think is actually going to bode well for them in their offense. So I did set my total 154.5, looking at the over. I'm seeing if Austin made them a 14.5 point favorite, so here at the 15 plus, going to be willing to take those points to go along with the over. 799, 800 on the betting board. Utah Valley is going to be playing against Tarleton State. Tarleton State is a underdog of 2.5 points, and your total on this game is 136. And with Tarleton State, I did make them a favorite of 2 points. So here at the price that we've got right now, I'm going to be taking a look at them outright on the money line. I am not quite sure why Utah Valley is a favorite in this spot, as Utah Valley has been one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. Now, it's not like this Tarleton State team is lighting the world on fire from distance either. They are shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range, but they've got the added element of being able to generate those turnovers. A top 40 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they go up against a Utah Valley team as a bottom 30 team with regards to 3-point shooting percentage. Caleb Stone-Carrawell, along with Drake Allen, have been able to give you double figures, and when it comes to Drake Allen, he just has been rough with his 3-point shooting last year. Over at Southern Utah, he was a relatively good shooter, and I think that there might be a little bit of positivity coming for him, as shooting 15.5% from 3-point range overall for the season, but rough for him. And on top of that, I know that he's been dealing with a few injury concerns as well, and his facilitation has actually been quite a bit better recently as well. But for Utah Valley, this also is a squad that is outside the top 200 with regards to the rebound rate. Nobody other than Trayvon Doris, who's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, is giving you north of 4.5 boards. So that's an issue for a Utah Valley team that is outside the top 125 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. For Utah Valley, they've been able to do an okay job of being able to guard the 3-point arc, but against Tarleton State, this team is really looking to knife it down low. They're looking to really exert their will in terms of the turnovers, and with Utah Valley, they've been relatively smart in terms of being able to take care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, but I do think that for Tarleton State, this is a very good matchup for them going up against a Utah Valley team that is not going to be able to unearth any of their weaknesses. So I did set Tarleton State as a favorite on the road. I did make them a 2-point favorite, so looking at them outright on the money line, and did set my total at 136. This has been a Tarleton State team that has been playing some more harebrained results recently. They've gotten to at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games, and they've also surrendered at least 68 points in 4 of their last 5, going up against the Utah Valley team that they themselves have given up at least 70 in 4 out of their last 5. So it's a circumstance where you're at the 135.5 to 136. It's the maximum willing to take over, but so I told 136, so at the 135.5 looking over, and I'm looking at Tarleton on the money line. 801, 802 on the betting board. North Carolina A&T, it's a road face-off against College of Charleston. Charleston does find themselves as 19.5 point favorites. Your total, you're going to be getting that anywhere between 158 and 157.5. With Charleston, I did set them as a favorite of 17.5 points. So here at the 18 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points. With A&T, the defense has been wretched. They are outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do have a takeover scorer, and they've got a bunch that does not turn the ball over at all. North Carolina A&T, actually a top 20 team towards the fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, with Landon Glasper headlining things with 21 points, 3.5 boards. Doesn't shoot it well from 3, only about 32%. And then you've got Kamon Shell, who's been really that main facilitator, giving out about 4.5 assists per game, going up against a Charleston team in which they're looking to utilize all their bodies. They've got pretty much like 9 different guys that cycle into a game. They've had Ante Badazovic really be their main guy with 6.5 boards, 12.5 points per game, but it's a Charleston team that they're just not doing the things that made them so successful in past years. Usually they'd be able to generate a lot of havoc and a bunch of turnovers. They're only getting about 5.7 steals per contest this season. They're only shooting about 32% from 3 as well, while CJ Fulton does a nice job giving up 4 assists, and Charleston is turning the ball over less than they did a season ago. They're just not generating the same amount of turnovers that they did last year as well, and this is an A&T team that they themselves don't do a great job of being able to generate turnovers as well, and this is a Charleston team that, with regards to offensive rebound rate, they are a top 75 team in the country, and they're a top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis as well, but down to 277th with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. With this North Carolina A&T team, they do leave themselves susceptible to giving up some open threes, but they've been able to do a little bit more in terms of generating turnovers, about 200th with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You're expecting more out of guys like a Frankie Policelli, who's been able to give you about 8 or so points per contest. Range Smith shoots about 35% from 3, but you'd like that to be a little bit higher as well. And now down low for this North Carolina A&T team, you've been able to get a little bit more, as you got Jason Murphy supplying the team with 6.5 rebounds per game after he was missing for the first 9 games of the season. And with the way that A&T is able to take care of the ball, even though it has not necessarily been the world's most most efficient offense. They've been able to do a solid job of just being able to get some shots up, and they've been able to do a good job of being able to rebound a little bit better ever since Murphy has come into the fold. And for this A&T team, they've now given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. It is a Charleston team that they've also been able to get to at least 74 points in each of their last 4 games, but they've also now given up at least 78 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So situation of something's got to give. I do think that this is going to be a high-scoring affair. Charleston has really cranked up their tempo. Semi-total 161.5, low over, and I'm going to be willing to take the 19.5 with A&T. 803, 804 on the betting board. Montana State hits the road face-off against Northern Colorado, and Northern Colorado is a favorite of 6.5 points. So on this game is 156 or 156.5 with Northern Colorado. I did set them as a favorite of 7 points. So it is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay this number with Northern Colorado. They've got St. Thomas, who has been one of the best mid-major players in all of college basketball, supplying the team with nearly 20 points, 8 boards, 3 assists. He's been able to do it all for this Northern Colorado team, and he shoots in the low to mid-30s from three-point range for a Northern Colorado team that is a top 50 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, for Montana State, what they've done well is being able to guard the three-point arc. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that balloons up to north of 35% when they're away from home, and then that goes to about 29% when they are at home. And they get to face off against a Northern Colorado team that, well, quite frankly, they're the opposite in terms of being able to guard the arc. 344th in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. But for this Montana State team, much like you've got St. Thomas doing it all on the Northern Colorado side, they've had Robert Ford III be absolutely incredible. He's been able to give the team north of 2 steals. He's doling out 5 assists at 6 feet tall. He's hauling in there 8 rebounds, 15.5 points per game. I absolutely love his game, but you just don't have anyone else that's really able to help him out. This team as a whole, they're shooting about 35.5% from three-point range, and they've cut down on the turnovers a little bit. They're down to about 11.9 turnovers per game. Brandon Garaki has given the team about 15.5 points per contest, but other than Ford, you don't have anything down low. As a result, this is a Montana State team that's well outside the top 225 in terms of their rebound rate. For Northern Colorado, they still do leave a little bit of something to be desired, but they're about 200th with this regard. Riley Abercrombie is at 6'9", able to pop some threes. He's able to lend a little bit of versatility. Both of these teams have been very lackadaisical in terms of their defense, even though Montana State does a good job of guarding the arc. They're 243rd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. When it comes to Northern Colorado, they're up to about 304th with this regard as well. But that said, I do think that with Northern Colorado, they're going to be able to take you to a Montana State team that has been playing a little bit more slow. This is a Northern Colorado team that they play fast, but they don't necessarily play at warp speed. But I do think that St. Thomas is going to be the best player in this game, and I do think that with Montana State not being able to get any second chances on a Northern Colorado team that can be quite vulnerable with that regard, and I do think that St. Thomas is going to be able to eat up the glass. That's going to allow them to be able to get this win for a Northern Colorado team that, if you look at the defense recently, they have now given up in regulation because the Idaho State game, that went to 2 overtimes. They have been able to give up fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So I did set my total more around a 153, so here at the 156, looking under, and with Northern Colorado, want to lay up to 6.5 with them. 805, 806 on the betting board. South Dakota is going to be playing us in Denver. The Denver Pioneers are a 2.5 point favorite. Your total is 161. With Denver, I did set them as a favorite of 3 points. Here at the 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. Denver has the top scorer in all of college basketball, and Tommy Bruner. He's been giving out north of 25 points per game, shooting darn near 40% from 3. And for Denver, this is a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They only turn the ball over about 9.5 times per contest. You've got Bruner giving out 4.5 assists per game, but he's got some help from a pair of Pac-12 transfers. Tuki Tanamo, who comes in from Stanford, 8 boards, 16.5 points per game, and then Jackson Brenchley, who's been able to supply 10.5 points, right around about 3 assists, shoots about 35% from 3-point range. All in all, it's a Denver team that is shooting about 36% from the outside. They get to go up against a South Dakota team that has had their issues on defense. They are well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for South Dakota, 319th nationally in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. We'll say this for South Dakota: they allow opponents to shoot well north of 38% from 3-point range away from home. That goes down to about 32.5% when they are at home. And for South Dakota, they should be able to do a nice job down low with Liat Theone being able to give you about 10 rebounds per game. For South Dakota, this is a top 125 team in all of college basketball regards rebound rate. Denver is outside the top 150, so there's a little bit of an edge to be had for the South Dakota team there. You also have Caleb Stewart back in the fold after he was missing for 4 games, shooting 41% from the outside, 16.5 points per game. But other than Theone, you don't have a lot down low when it comes to South Dakota, and they also have been turning the ball for 13.5 times per contest. Denver does a much better job of being able to take care of the ball, and for South Dakota, this is a bottom 30 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Last time these two teams played, that was at double overtime, 111-110 game. I do think that we are going to be not seeing Caleb Stewart along with Tommy Bruner combined for 93 points between the two of them in this game, as you saw South Dakota in that game shoot 14 of 24 from three-point range. Denver, they are also rough in terms of their three-point shooting defense. Denver is 356th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, so I do think that you're going to have a lot of made outside shots once again. I don't think that you get both teams to 100, but I do think that you get a pretty similar result this time around. Denver actually guards the arc better on the road rather than at home, so I did set my total 163. I'm looking at the over, and with Denver, made them the 3-point favorite, so going to be one to lay it with the Pioneers, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over as well. 807, 808 on the betting board. Omaha is going to be on the road. They're going to be facing off against North Dakota, and North Dakota is a favorite of 3.5 points. Total on this game is between 146.5 and 147, and when it comes to Omaha, I did set them as an underdog of 2.5 points, so with 3 being my buy point, I'm going to be willing to take a look at the points. Omaha has done a nice job of really featuring Frankie Fiddler. Fiddler has been able to be all over the floor for this team. He's supplying the team with about 18.5 points per contest. He's done a nice job being able to pull in there about 6 boards. He gives you a little bit of outside shooting as well. He has been absolutely supreme for this team. And then you take a look on the flip side. It's a North Dakota bunch in which it feels like it's a little bit of a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach, as you've got Tyree Iheanacho, who was a 2-time transfer that was out of the fold to begin the season, but he's been able to resurface and has done a nice job giving the team a double-figure amount of points. He gives you 5 boards. He gives you a steal. Just anything that you need, he's able to do a nice job of being able to supply that. And then when it comes to this Omaha team, you do have Markel Sutton, who's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. It is an Omaha team that is well outside the top 200 in terms of their rebound rate, but this is also a North Dakota team that they've got their issues when it comes to being able to guard the 3-point arc, which I do think is going to allow this Nebraska-Omaha team to be able to remain lively in this game. For Nebraska-Omaha, they themselves not amazing with their 3-point shooting defense, but in a roadside shoot corner environment, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 32.2% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, for North Dakota, they allow opponents to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range when they are at home. That is one of the worst marks that you're going to find in all of college basketball, with an Omaha team that doesn't necessarily have an amount of size that is ideal. Meanwhile, it's a North Dakota team that they've been able to get BJ Omak going quite a bit more. He's been able to do a good job of being able to chip in their 17 points. He's able to give you about 6 to 7 rebounds per game, along with Amar Kulojovic, who's been up to about 8 rebounds per game. Omaha being able to have that nice elixir of being able to go bombs away from the outside while North Dakota controls things inside. I do think that makes for a little bit of a nip and tuck game. North Dakota comes in on a 6-game win streak, having scored at least 74 points in all but one of these games. Meanwhile, for Omaha, they come in having played some better defense, 74 points or fewer surrender, which doesn't sound like much, but in the Summit League, that's actually quite good in each of their last 4 games. So something's got to give here. I did set my total at 144.5. Omaha, a bottom 75 team with regards to total possessions per game, I think is going to be able to slow this game down. So I'm looking at the under, and I'm looking at Omaha catching 3+ here. 809, 810 on the betting board. Northern Arizona is going to be playing against Montana. Montana is a favorite of 5.5 points. Total on this game is 143, and with Montana, I did make them the favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the 5.5, and a big reason why is that this team all of a sudden is getting really good 3-point shooting, as you had Aiden Moody be off of his game to begin the season. Now he's back up to shooting nearly 36% from 3-point range for a Montana team that they just don't beat themselves. They shoot 78% the free throw line. They turn the ball over just 10 times per contest. Now for Montana, they do leave something to be desired defensively. They allow opponents to shoot about 35.5% from 3, which balloons up to 38.5% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot corner environment. So that's a little bit less than terrific. But for Montana, I do think that they take it to a Northern Arizona team that they're just not going to be able to execute on that lackadaisical 3-point shooting defense, as Northern Arizona, they themselves have been relatively solid at being able to guard the 3-point arc, but are still well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is because they're very weak down low. Carson Tout, their top rebounder from a season ago, and also their main facilitator, has been missing for the entirety of the season. So that means that Montana, with having Deshaun Thomas giving you 6 boards per contest, will allow, being able to supply 6.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. These guys should be able to dominate the glass against a Northern Arizona team that does have Trent McLaughlin, who has been able to supply about 16.5 points per contest, shooting about 35% from 3-point range, but Northern Arizona's collective, they're only shooting about 31% from 3-point range in their own right. They're allowing opponents to shoot 26.5% from 3-point range against them at home, and you do have Oakland Fort, who's been able to turn it up a little bit more, giving you 10.5 points per game, but 12.5 turnovers per contest for a Northern Arizona team that is relatively low tempo. That's not ideal, and Northern Arizona just has been sloppy on offense all season long. 314th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are scoring 17.5 points more per 100 possessions at home, and the trip from Montana to Flagstaff, Arizona is not an easy one, to say the least, but Montana has been pretty dynamic with their offense, a top 75 team in terms of points scored per possession. These are two relatively slow, controlled teams, which is why I do agree with the total of 143 that we're seeing right now. This was an opener of 144, and if we can get back to that opener of 144, going to be looking at the under, but I do think that Montana executes better. I think that Montana also is going to be able to win the rebound battle against the Northern Arizona team that is outside the top 275 in terms of their rebound rate. So going to be taking a look at Montana, willing to lay up to 6.5 with them, and when it comes to the total, I'm going to be taking a look at a 144 if we can get back there under. 8-11, 8-12 on the betting board. UMKC is on the road facing off against North Dakota State, and North Dakota State is a favorite of 4 points. Your total is between 140.5 and 141 with North Dakota State. I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. Here at the 4, I'm going to be willing to lay it with North Dakota State. This defense has been all sorts of yuck, outside the top 335 in points allowed on a per possession basis, but North Dakota State has also been able to do a really good job of executing on offense. Would like to see Alex Morgan be able to pull in there some more rebounds. He at 6'10", has only been able to give you in that neighborhood of about 4.5 rebounds per game. But Bowden Skunberg has been able to give you 15 points per contest, shoots 930s from 3-point range. You've had Damari Wheeler-Thomas along Skunberg combined for about 5.5 assists per game. And for North Dakota State, they're now inside the top 165 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And they go up against the Kansas City team that has had some of the more dramatic home and road splits in all of college basketball. For UMKC, they're averaging about 11.6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are away from home rather than when they are at home. And you couple that with the fact that they are giving up more than 22 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. That's an issue, as they've had Alan David Abeka Jr. really see a diminished role after last season. He gave the team 7+ rebounds per game. I have no idea why they aren't utilizing him anymore, but that said, they have now really brought him in off the bench, and they're not letting him really be able to cook the way they did a season ago. So there's that decision from UMKC. You've got Jamar Brown, who's able to give you about 14 points, 6 boards, and he gets a little bit of help in the backcourt from Christian Coruscant, who has come in from the SoCon. He's been able to dole out 4 assists, has been able to chip in there about 9.5 points per game. I thought that Artis Stapleton was going to be able to see a little bit more time in the backcourt. Began his career at Radford, was down at the non-D1 level for a few seasons, but he's been a big giant afterthought for this team. As for UMKC, they're overall shooting only about 33.5% from 3-point range. North Dakota State very prone to giving up a lot of points, but for the North Dakota State team, defense has been quite a bit better recently. They have now given up in regulation 70 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games. You've been able to get quite a bit more as well out of J.J. White, who's been able to shoot 43.5% from 3-point range. And as a matter of fact, the ancillary pieces for this team, you've got White, you've also got someone like a Noah Fredersen, hopefully I said that one correctly, to JVS Miller. These guys have all been able to shoot north of 41% from 3 for a North Dakota State team that they're shooting about 38.5% from distance. They do a relatively solid job of being able to run some clean offense, as their turnovers on a per possession basis is a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. You really don't have a lot of teams in general in this conference that do generate turnovers, but for North Dakota State, I do think that they're going to be able to bury quite a few shots on a UMKC team that has been giving it up all season long from 3-point range. UMKC 227th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, balloons up to 36% from 3-point range in a roadside shooting court environment of North Dakota State being able to hit north of 38% of their threes. I do think that North Dakota State controls this game. I did set the Bison as a 5.5 point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 145.5, despite the fact that both of these teams are slow tempo. This is a North Dakota State team that I think is going to be able to take advantage of a UMKC team that's just not great on defense away from home. So looking at the over, I want to lay it with the Bison. 8-13, 8-14 on the betting board. St. Thomas plays those to Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts is an underdog of 7.5 points. Total on this game is between 143.5 and 144. With Oral Roberts, I did set them as a underdog of 5 points, so at 7.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points. With St. Thomas, the team has been really good at being able to lock down on defense. They're a top 130 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Going up against the Oral Roberts squad that they are really going to be looking to go bombs away from 3-point range. For St. Thomas, they allow opponents to shoot 33.6% from 3-point range. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's 172nd in college basketball for Oral Roberts. They are going to lose that battle down low on the glass. They are outside the top 325 with regards to their rebound rate, but St. Thomas is also a team that's well outside the top 225 with regards to their rebound rate, as St. Thomas does not have a single player on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. They've been relying upon Parker Jorklin and Raheem Anthony, and they're about 9 rebounds per game to be able to control things. Meanwhile, Jalen Bedford for Oral Roberts those, he, along Kareem Thompson, combined for about 13.5 rebounds, about 27.5 points per game, and both shoot north of 39.5% from three-point range. Isaac McBride has been a 38.5% three-point shooter, supplying 21 points, 3 assists per contest. Overall, Oral Roberts, a top 35 team with their three-point shooting percentage of 39.1% against Division I teams. They've actually shot worse from three against non-D1 teams, and it travels. They've been able to shoot 39.8% from three-point range in a roadside shoot-to-court environment. I do think that St. Thomas is going to be able to get things played at their tempo, but that's mainly because Oral Roberts is also playing quite a bit more slowly. They're about 200th in the country with regards to total possessions per game, though I do think that Parker Jorkland, who's been able to give you double figures, along with Raheem Anthony, are going to be able to get theirs, and I think that St. Thomas pulls off this win. I do think that Oral Roberts is going to be able to hit enough threes to be able to hold in this game. I do think that it is going to be a little bit tougher for Oral Roberts to be able to make threes in this game, just because St. Thomas is a bunch of, they do play at such a slow, grimy style that they're going to be able to close out a little bit more than a lot of normal Oral Roberts teams do, as for Oral Roberts, they've actually gotten to at least 74 points in 4 of their last 5 games. For the St. Thomas team, they've given up 69 points or fewer in regulation, because that game against South Dakota went to overtime in 4 of their last 5 games. Last time these two teams played, it was 87-76, a game in which you saw both of these teams combined to shoot about 50% from the floor, and you saw a grand total of north of 40 free throws in it. I do think that the free throws, they get bogged down very much in this game, and I do think the things do get slowed down. So looking at the under, that said, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Oral Roberts, set them as a dog more around 5.5. 8-15, 8-16 on the betting board. Colorado plays with Arizona State. Arizona State is a underdog of 12.5 points. Total's game is 149.5. I made Arizona State an underdog of 13 points. So 12.5 is the absolute max I'm willing to lay, but I'm willing to lay 12.5. Arizona State has actually been pretty rock solid in terms of their defense. This is a top 85 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it has been a unit that has been able to travel quite well. For Arizona State, they are giving up about 11 points more per 100 possessions when they are away from home, and recently they've been falling on some tougher times. In their last 3 games, they've been giving up about 108.5 points per 100 possessions, so that's actually blown them just outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, whereas last week they were more in the top 80 range. But with this Arizona State team, you've been able to get quite a bit down low out of Jalen Gaffney, who's been able to give you about a block and a half per contest. You've been able to have Jamea Neal be able to give you about 5.5 boards, but Arizona State is just a little bit outgunned on the glass. Colorado is a top 30 team in terms of their rebound rate. Arizona State is outside the top 300, and you've got 2 featured guys, KJ Simpson, Tristan Da Silva, combining for nearly 35 points per game. Both give you 5.5 boards, and Simpson is shooting 46% from three-point range. One thing that Arizona State can do to be able to provide a little bit of speed bump is that the team has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc all season long. They are allowing opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3. Problem is, that doesn't really travel. They've been allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from three-point range away from home, more like 29% from three-point range at home. Colorado's certainly been leaky in terms of their defense. They are well outside the top 70 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and are about 165th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But other than Jose Perez, who's shooting darn near 50% from three-point range for Arizona State, you've got no consistency with this team on offense. Arizona State well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Frankie Collins has been a guy that's been able to be a matrix, fill up every single column with the stat sheet. 3 steals, 3.5 assists, 4.5 boards, 13.5 points per contest. But really, other than Frankie Collins, you don't have a lot going for this Arizona State offense that has been held to 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Colorado, this has been a team that has been all over the place in terms of their offense. At 86 plus points in 3 straight games. In their last 2, they've been held below 70 in both of those as well. Now, it is a Colorado team that they've got some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. Their last 2 doldrum games, they did come away from home, and as a matter of fact, for Colorado, they do shoot 43.5% from three-point range at home in a roadside shoot-to-court environment. That slides all the way down to about 33.5%, but I do think that the home cooking of Colorado, that should be able to get them back online and back to being able to get a nice double-figure win. So I did set my line at 13. I'm going to be willing to lay the 12.5 at. Did set my total 145. Colorado, I know, is going to be able to do their part. I just question whether or not Arizona State, who is a top 125 team with regards to total possessions per game, hits enough shots to be able to do so with theirs, and I do think that Arizona State also gets bludgeoned on the glass. So looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay with Colorado, 8-17, 8-18 on the betting board. Utah plays us to Arizona. Arizona is a 5-point favorite. Your total is 160.5. Did set Arizona as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 5 to 5.5 with Arizona. It certainly has been all over the place for this bunch, but this is still one of the most dynamic teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Problem for Arizona has been the defense has not been the same when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. Arizona still a squad that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis is 24th in the country, but they are allowing about 23.5 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home, and they do go up against a Utah team that has had some of the most stark home and road splits in the country. Utah, overall, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, is 83rd, but they are giving up about 25 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. For Utah, you've also got Brandon Carlson, who's done a nice job supplying 17 points, 6 boards. He's able to shoot it well from 3-point range. This is a matchup, though, that we have already seen this season, and when Utah went on the road to Tucson face off against Arizona, they just got completely lambasted in that game. So you do have to have your trepidations on that front. It is a Utah team that has been able to get quite a bit of production out of Davion Smith. Raleigh Worcester has been out of the fold in terms of the point guard spot, but he's filled in quite admirably. He's been able to give out north of 4.5 assists per contest, not turning the ball over Huck flat. That's been big. And then you've also got Gabe Hansen, who's been able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, but Caleb Love supplying 18 points, shooting well from 3-point range. Kylan Boswell not turning the ball over, being able to give double figures. Paul Larson being able to shoot north of 45% from 3-point range, and this being a Utah team that they are quite susceptible to giving up the long ball. It is an Arizona team that they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot about 37% from 3-point range in a road/short corner environment, but for Utah, they're 275th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. As a result, I do think that you get a little bit more of an up and down game. I did set my total at a 160. Was seeing a few straight 160s out there, so at a 160 or less, I'm going to be looking at the over, and with Arizona, want to lay up to 6 points with them. 819, 820 on the betting board. Tennessee Tech gets a road face-off against Southeast Missouri State. Southeast Missouri State is a favorite of 1 to 1.5 points. Total is 135. I did set Southeast Missouri State as a underdog of 2 points. I'm going to be looking at Tennessee Tech outright on the money line. Tennessee Tech has had a rough go of it this season, being well outside the top 200 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but JVS Harvey has done a nice job being able to help things out. He's been able to log for the team nearly 15 points per contest, chips in there a few boards, and they go up against the Southeast Missouri State team that, I mean, it's really hard to make Tennessee Tech a favorite, but if you're going to do it against anyone, it's the Southeast Missouri State team that's been well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 225 in terms of their rebound rate. They're turning the ball over 13 times per contest. Southeast Missouri State shoots 29% from 3. Rob Martin is able to give you 11 points, 3 assists per game. That's about all the good that you've got coming for this team, though. Is Adam Larson, Josh Early, Aquan Smart, they all give you between about 8.5 to 9.5 points per game, but you don't have anyone on the roster right now that's healthy that gives you north of 4.3 rebounds per game, and it doesn't sound like much, but Daniel Igbanui, who's been able to give you about 6 boards per contest for Tennessee Tech, should be your best rebounder in this game. Tennessee Tech overall does shoot about 33% from 3-point range, and really, the lone thing that Southeast Missouri State has gotten right is guarding the 3-point arc. They're a top 110 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but with them not being able to knock down a lot of threes, with them having no cohesion whatsoever, turning the ball over left and right against a Tennessee Tech team that it's not like they're amazing with their offense, but they only turn the ball over about 11.8 times per contest. I do think that Tennessee Tech going to be able to get by a Southeast Missouri State team that is still, in my opinion, searching for their identity in February, a place where you don't want to be. So I did set Tennessee Tech as the favorite of 2 points in this ordeal. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line, and with regards to this total, I did set mine at a 136. So seeing what we've got right now, it is going to be a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at this total to the over, with us being at a 135 to go along Tennessee Tech outright on the money line. 821, 822 on the betting board. Little Rock is where they're facing off against Western Illinois. Western Illinois is a favorite of a point. Total on this game, going to be getting it at a 142. I did set my total at 141, looking under. Battle of tempos. Little Rock, a top 100 team with regards to total possessions per game. Western Illinois, a bottom 100 team with regards to total possessions per game, but I do think that because Western Illinois is going to be able to win the battle down low, that they're going to be able to win the game. As for this Western Illinois bunch, they have been able to get quite a bit more recently out of Ryan Myers. He comes in from Iona, and he's been able to do a nice job being able to give the team about 15 points per contest. He's been able to shoot in the high 30s from 3-point range, but I mean, it's really Drew Cisse's team. He's doing amazing work down low for Western Illinois. Only gives you about 8.5 points, but at about 6'7", 6'8". He's able to give you about 2.5 assists, and he's pulling in there 11.8 rebounds per game. That is certain in all of college basketball to go along 2 blocks per contest, just completely dominating with that fast set, going up against a Little Rock team that they're okay with their three-point shooting. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, it's about 33.5%, but this Little Rock team does look to knife the ball down low. They do have their top 5 scorers, 4 of them, being able to supply north of 5.3 rebounds per game. That includes Jameer Chaplin, along with Caitlin Robinson. They've been able to do a good job in tandem, being able to supply about 32 points per contest. Robinson has been in and out of the fold, but when he's been in, he's been able to do a good job of facilitating as well, 5+ assists in 4 of the team's last 5 games. That said, he's also turned the ball over at least 4 times in 3 out of the last 4 contests as well, going up against a Western Illinois team that they really don't have active hands. This Western Illinois team is not going to be looking to generate a bunch of turnovers or anything like that. Neither is Little Rock. Little Rock, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, well inside the top 225 of the country. So Western Illinois' main kryptonite north of 12.5 turnovers per game, that is going to be buried in this one. But for Western Illinois, they take away the three-point arc from you as well. 21st in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And this is a Little Rock team that just under this coaching regime in general, typically they've had a rough time being able to guard inside, and that's the case once again this year. With Little Rock, they actually do a relatively solid job of being able to take away a lot of open looks from 3 as well. They're about 113th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but despite the fact that Little Rock does a pretty solid job of being able to hit the glass, they're outside the top 155 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and with Cisse doing all that he's doing down low, Western Illinois should be able to win that battle down low, as Western Illinois, even though they're not quite as good inside the arc as they are outside the arc at guarding, they're still about 87th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. You've been able to have some guys be able to step up like a Bradley Douglas for Little Rock, giving you a few assists per contest. Jameer Chaplin is a much better three-point shooter than he was a season ago, but for Western Illinois, with Ryan Myers being a good constant for this offense, I do think that Western Illinois holds up on home and is able to win from within. I did set my total at a 141, so you're at the 142 looking at the under, and to the credit of Little Rock, they've actually given up fewer than 70 points themselves in each of their last 5 games, so both of these teams coming in good form defensively. Looking at the under and looking at Western Illinois, set them as a favorite of 3 points, 823, 824 on the betting board. Lindenwood is going to be playing against Tennessee State. Tennessee State just find themselves as a favorite of 5 to 5.5 points. Total on this game is 139. I did set Tennessee State as a favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Tennessee State. It's been a bunch that has been having a little bit of a tough time down low, but the presence of Jason Thibodeau has been helping out quite a bit. He's now given the team 3 blocks per contest. Not a supreme rebounder. Tennessee State well outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate, but the good news for them is that they get to go up against a Lindenwood team that they don't have a whole heck of a lot down low other than Keenan Cole, who's been able to give about 18 points, 6 rebounds per game. They just don't have anyone that's able to supply, and you're up to about 19 points per game with Cole, but you've, other than Darius Bean, who's been able to give you 13 points per contest, not getting any sort of offensive production from really anyone else. Nobody else on the roster gives you north of 7 points per contest. You don't have a single guy on this Lindenwood team that gives you north of 2.2 assists per contest. In terms of assists per possession, this is one of the worst teams in all of college basketball. This Lindenwood team shoots 27.5% from 3-point range, and they go up against a Tennessee State team that they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. For Tennessee State, they do rank in the top 150 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They've been able to get really good results out of their main backcourt pieces. Christian Brown being able to supply 14 points per contest. Marcus Fitzgerald still has not been able to find his footing in terms of being able to go bombs away from 3-point range, but still, you've been able to get a lot of other guys to be able to get into the mix, like Keenan Hodges, who comes in from Eastern Illinois. He's supplying the team with about 9.5 to 10 points, 5 boards, a steal and a half per contest, with the team shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. But when it comes to Lindenwood, just them not being able to find their footing, them being outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, them being well outside the top 300 in terms of their points scored on a per possession basis, and this Lindenwood team just not being able to bust through with their offense. They have scored now 71 points or fewer in all but 1 out of their last 13 games. I do think that a Tennessee State team that has now given up 68 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games could be able to hold it down here. I did set Tennessee State as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I just flat out don't think that Lindenwood does their part with this total. Semi-total 137, diving under, and willing to lay with Tennessee State. 825, 826 on the betting board. Eastern Illinois, it's the road face-off against Southern Indiana. Southern Indiana is a favorite of 3 points. Total on this game is 134.5 with Southern Indiana. I did set them as a favorite of 1.5. So here at the 3, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Eastern Illinois. Southern Indiana has been able to build up their offense a little bit more as they're still a team that's well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but Southern Indiana has gotten to at least 70 in now 4 of their last 5 games, but this is not the same three-point shooting team that we've seen in past years with them, shooting about 32.5% from the outside. You've been able to get 2 guys in A.J. Smith, coupled with Jeremiah Hernandez, who have been your main 2 scorers. They've been able to combine for about 30 points per game, and Smith chips in their 9 boards, but really, other than Mr. Milwaukee, who's been able to shoot 43.5% from 3, Jack Milwaukee has been able to give you about 8.5 points per game. You really don't have anyone that's been able to give you some dynamic production in the backcourt. Meanwhile, Tiger Booker, he's probably going to be the best guard in this game. 15.5 points, 3 assists, 2.5 steals, and it is a bunch in Eastern Illinois that only turns the ball over 10 times per contest. Meanwhile, they're a top 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. For Eastern Illinois, 316th in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage. Defense, that has been a little bit rough for them, but they've been able to get down low. Cooper Jacoby to be able to supply the team with about 7.5 rebounds per game. This is a Southern Indiana team that, despite the fact that they have been able to get good production down low out of A.J. Smith, who has been able to supply those 8.5 rebounds per game, this is still a Southern Indiana team that leaves a lot to be desired with regards to being able to glass, about 160th in the country with regards to rebound rate. For Eastern Illinois, they're about 284th with this regard, but they've actually done a much better job of hitting the glass away from home, nearly 50-50 with regards to their rebound rate away from home, and I do think that that'll keep Eastern Illinois lively in a game where they should be able to win the turnover battle. For Eastern Illinois, they do need to bust through to be able to score some more points. They've scored 60 or fewer in each of their last 3 games, so I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring slog. Semi-total at a 135.5. Here at the 134.5, I do think that we went a little bit too low. I think that this is going to be a very close nip and tuck game, one where you could see a lot of late game fouling. So looking at the over on 134.5, and with Eastern Illinois, 2+ going to be willing to take the points with them. 827, 828 on the betting board. SIU Edwardsville hits a road face-off against Morehead State, and Morehead State is a 10.5 point favorite. Your total on this game between 132 and 132.5 with Morehead State. I did set them as a favorite of 10.5 points. We were seeing a few 11s out there a little bit earlier. If we can get to an 11, that'd be my buy point on SIU. Edwardsville would need 10 or less to be able to lay it with Morehead State. Morehead State has been able to do a really good job defensively, and this Morehead State team is a top 45 team in terms of their overall rebound rate, but SIU Edwardsville, after they were horrible with their defense to begin the season, all of a sudden they've been able to come back to life. If you look at the overall season numbers, it doesn't sound too tremendous, as for SIU Edwardsville, they're about 160th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but if you look at what they've done in OVC play, and if you look at only conference play, this has been a top 50 defense in all of college basketball with regards to their efficiency, as SIU Edwardsville made it through the month of January having allowed north of 65 points just once. That was against Little Rock in their first game in the month of January, so this team has really been able to rise up from the depths of, well, not a good place, and for SIU Edwardsville, last time they played against Morehead State, they allowed just 48 points. Now, I don't think the Lightning strikes twice. Morehead State shot 3 of 27 from three-point range in that game, and overall for the season, Morehead State is a bunch that shoots from three-point range about 34.5%. You've been able to have Jordan Lathan, Khalil Thomas both shoot about 39% from the outside. These 2 guys combined for about 11 boards, 27.5 points per game, and then Riley Minix, he's been very versatile with his 19 points, 9.5 boards, so Morehead State should be able to do a better job here. But for Edwardsville, you've got the Wright brothers and Shamar and Lamar Wright, both of these guys shooting in the mid to high 30s from three-point range, especially Shamar, your top scorer, 38% three-point shooter, 15.5 points per game. For SIU Edwardsville, you've also got DeMarco Minor, who at 6 feet tall has been able to give the team about 8 rebounds in the neighborhood, about 14 points per contest as well. For an Edwardsville team that, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, is in the top half of all of college basketball, well, they themselves only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. For Edwardsville, they're about 238th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Morehead State should be able to win the battle there, and I certainly don't think that we're going to see Morehead State shoot 3 of 27 from three-point range once again, but I do think that for Edwardsville, they are really improving with regards to their defense. I do think that they're going to be able to do a good job once again of being able to guard the arc, not quite to what we saw the first time around. Edwardsville, I believe, is better than the 254th ranking that they've got right now in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, so I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring slog. I did set my total at a 130.5, so you're at the 132, diving under, and at north of 10, going to be willing to take the points with Edwardsville, need at least 11 with them, 10 or less, going to be willing to lay it with Morehead State. 829, 830 on the betting board. Weber State plays us at Portland State, and Portland State is an underdog of 9 points. Your total on this game is 143.5 with Portland State. I did set them as a underdog of 11.5 points, so it's a number that I'm going to be willing to lay with Weber State. Weber State is going to be having the Joneses out, as you've got Dylan Jones, who's been able to give you 20 points, north of 10 boards, in the neighborhood about 5 assists per contest. And I do think that for Dylan Jones, he's going to be able to completely take over a game against a Portland State team that now has become one of those wholes greater than some of its parts sort of bunches. As for this Portland State team, last year they had Cameron Parker that was really steering the ship on offense, but you do have a lot of guys that they just do a nice job of being able to make some contributions, like KJ Allen, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest. Portland State has been able to get a little bit going with regards to just being able to take care of the ball, about 10.8 turnovers per game. They only shoot about 33% from three-point range, and that's where you do want to be hitting this Weber State team. Weber State has been a little bit vulnerable from the outside. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 33% from three. That's about 139th in all of college basketball. For Portland State, this is a bunch that will give up a lot of looks from the outside. In a road/shoot court environment, they allow opponents to shoot 39.8% from three-point range, and that bodes very well for a Weber State team that you do have a pair of guys that do a nice job of helping out Dylan Jones, as you've been able to have Stephen Verplanken give you about 12 points, shooting north of 40% from three-point range, and then you've been able to get nearly about 10.5 points per game out of Blaze Threat, who's been able to dole out about 2.5 assists, shoots 36% from three, and all of a sudden you've been able to get a lot more down low out of Mason Kohler. Kohler was an afterthought towards the beginning part of the season, but now has been able to supply a double-figure amount of points in 4 of the last 5 games, 4+ boards in each out of the last 5, so he's really been able to rise up, help out a Weber State team that has a positive rebound rate, a Weber State team that overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they have gotten outside the top 100 because they have now given up 70+ points in 3 of their last 4 games, but it's still a squad that can really stifle you against a Portland State team that has now given up 90+ in 3 out of their last 5 games as well. This has really went sideways for this Portland State team. Last time these two teams played, neither team was able to get to 70 points. Weber State lost that game on the road 69-66 on a day where Weber State went just 7 of 26 from 3-point range. Steve Verplanken only had 3 points. I do think that the pieces around Jones going to be a little bit better in this spot. I do think that Weber State going to be able to control the rebound battle against a Portland State team that's well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate and be able to get revenge to the tune of double figures. I did set my total 141.5. Weber State well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and Portland State is really slowing down, so looking under and looking to lay it with Weber State. 831-832 on the betting board. Cal State Fullerton, it's the road face-off against UC Davis, and UC Davis is a 5.5 point favorite. Your total on this game, 133.5. The UC Davis, I did set them as a favorite in this ordeal of 7.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. UC Davis has one of the best takeover players in all of college basketball in Elijah Pepper. Pepper has been peppering teams with being able to supply north of 20 points per contest. He's able to give you 5+ rebounds per game. Not a guy that's going to go bombs away from 3-point range, but certainly someone that just gives you night in, night out production. And then on top of that, you get to go up against a Cal State Fullerton team that, while they're not doing a terrible job in terms of their defense, they're within the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It is a Fullerton team that they can really be hurt inside Fullerton. They're a top 70 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but UC Davis has become a top 80 team in terms of their points allowed on a per possession basis as well, and UC Davis does a nice job of being able to guard the arc as well. Top 85 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Max Jones has been able to supply Fullerton with 15.5 points per game, but really other than Dominic Bruton, who doesn't shoot it well from 3-point range, gives you about 12 to 13 points per game. Nobody else on Fullerton has really been able to give you double figures. Torrey San Antonio is a very good all-defensive big West player who's been able to give you about 8.5 points per game, but nobody really does their part down low for Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton well outside the top 225 in terms of rebound rate, with nobody being able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, this is a UC Davis team that they've been able to have a lot of ancillary producers be able to help this team out down low. They're about 186th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've had Nico Rokac, who's been able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game, and then Ty Johnson has become the main Robin to the Batman of Pepper, 16.5 points, 3.5 assists on 36% 3-point shooting. UC Davis does need to clean up the 14 turnovers per game, but they themselves do a much better job of being able to generate turnovers than Fullerton. And for this Davis team, they've really been able to lock it down in terms of their defense. They were giving up fewer than 70 points in regulation because the game against Bakersfield went to overtime in 5 out of their last 6 games. Last time these two teams played, UC Davis went on the road. They got the job done 67-65 against Fullerton on a night where they went just 5 of 23 from 3. This team should be a little bit hotter from the outside and should be able to win this game just a little bit more comfortably. I did set my total at a 133.5. Opener here was 132.5. I do think that this could be close enough for late game following. I do think that Fullerton, with their defense, keeps it somewhat tight, but I do think that Davis in the end is going to be able to separate with having the best player out there on the floor, so going to be willing to lay it with UC Davis, as I did set them as a 7.5 point favorite, and looking at the over as well. 833, 834 on the betting board. Utah Tech plays us to Southern Utah. Southern Utah finds themselves as a underdog of a point in some spots, a 1-point favorite. Total on this game between 153 and 153.5. I said Southern Utah is a 3.5 point favorite, so whether they be a 1-point favorite or a 1-point dog, looking at Southern Utah hopefully we can get a little bit of a more even price on a money line with Southern Utah. But either way, I'm going to be riding with them. This Utah Tech team just has not been able to take care of the ball. North of 14 turnovers per contest. This offense has been just sputtering in general. They very much rely upon three-point shooting to be able to get things going, and now they're shooting below 37% from three-point range as a collective, as they just have not been able to have a lot of rhyme or reason, and they go up against a Southern Utah team that does a top 50 job in all of college basketball in terms of being able to guard the three-point arc, really other than Noah Gonsalves, who for this Utah Tech team is shooting 39% from three and is able to give you 12 points per contest. Don't have a lot of consistency from the outside. Tanner Christensen, about 11.7 rebounds per game for a Utah Tech team that's outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. Going against a Southern Utah team that they've got their warts on offense as well. They don't turn the ball over a ton with about 11.8 turnovers per game, but they only shoot about 30% from three-point range. Dominique Ford has had to become that go-to guy with about 16.5 points, 4 boards per game. Parcel Falah has been dealing with a little bit of injury, but he's been able to come back, and he's been able to give the team nearly about 6.5 rebounds per game as well, while Zion Young has been able to shoot a little bit better from three-point range recently, shooting about 32.5% from the outside, supplying the team with about 13.5 points per game, getting to at least 15 points in 4 of the last 5 games. This Southern Utah team has actually been able to be pretty consistent when they've been on the road as well. And this is just a Utah Tech team that, in general, it's been pretty rough to be able to watch them just try to be able to operate, not necessarily have a lot of facilitation, not much of a point guard, while Southern Utah has been able to generate actually about 2.3 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home, with Utah Tech being a team that's well outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but also being a squad in really bad form with their offense, scoring fewer than 72 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that it's going to be a little bit rough for Utah Tech in this one, which is why I made Southern Utah the 3.5 point favorite. Wanted to lay it with Southern Utah and did set my total 151.5 here at the 153, diving under, and wanted to lay it with Southern Utah. 835, 836 on the betting board. UAB is playing us to Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, a 4.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 156. I am going to be willing to lay with Florida Atlantic. I did set them as a 6 point favorite last time these two teams squared off. It was a double figure line with Florida Atlantic being the home team, and I feel like we've gone a little bit too far. It is a Florida Atlantic team that is outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Florida Atlantic is outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. UAB, though, is also outside the top 230 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are one of the worst three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. UAB has become one of those holes greater than some of its parts teams. You've got 5 different guys who give you between 10.5 and 12.2 points per contest, with Aaron Gaines leading the way with 12.2 points per contest. You do have Yaxel Lenborg, who's doing a nice job for a UAB team that is in the top 45 nationally with regards to their offensive rebound rate, being able to supply the team with about 9.5 rebounds per game, doing a good job on the offensive glass, but UAB is not going to be able to maximize on a Florida Atlantic team as rough with regards to being able to guard the arc, as they only shoot about 31.8% from 3, while John L. Davis is going to be the best offensive weapon in this game, shooting 49.5% from 3, 19 points, 7 boards per contest, with Vladislav Golden being able to supply 7 rebounds per game. Brian Greenlee give you 3 assists to 1.5 turnovers per game, and Florida Atlantic being a top 30 team nationally in terms of total points scored on a per possession basis. It does take a little bit of a fall off when they are away from home for Florida Atlantic, while they have been able to do a nice job in terms of their offense. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they do suffer a drop off of about 5.5 points per 100 possessions away from home, but I do think that Florida Atlantic, a bunch has really been able to bulk it up with regards to their defense. They've given up 70 points or fewer. They should do a solid job against the UAB team that in regulation they've been held to 70 points or fewer, and now 4 out of their last 5 games. I do think that Florida Atlantic goes on the road. They get the job done in a game that I still think that there's going to be a lot of scoring first time around. Both of these teams, they were able to get past north of 160 with regards to total. Did set my total at a 156. Opener was 157.5. Right now, still seeing a few straight 156.5s. Looking under, but Florida Atlantic willing to lay up to 5.5 with them. 837, 838 on the betting board. Idaho State plays us to Sacramento State, and Sacramento State does find themselves as 5.5 point underdogs. Totals between 129.5 and 128.5 with Sacramento State. I did set them as a underdog of 2.5 points. So here at the 5.5, I'm going to be willing to take the point. Sacramento State, a top 55 team in terms of rebound rate. They go up against an Idaho State team that they've done a nice job of being able to slow down games, but that just doesn't mean that they're a tremendous defense. They are outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Idaho State does have quite a bit of kryptonite in terms of being able to allow open looks from the outside. Idaho State is allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from 3. That actually balloons up to 37.5% from 3 outside the top 275 in all of college basketball, while you have a Sacramento State team that they've had a lot of moving pieces in the backcourt. You've been able to have Duncan Boom Boom Powell be a nice constant. He comes in from North Carolina A&T, 12 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, does a little bit of everything, while C.R. Moda, the Utah State transfer, has been able to supply about 12.5 points per game for a Sacramento State team that they're only shooting about 31.5% from three-point range, but Alex Patterson is now shooting 37% from the outside. You've been able to get quite a bit down low outside of Powell as well as C.R. Moda, along with someone like a Colin Wayne. These guys have been able to give you about 3 to 4 rebounds per contest, and then you take a look on the flip side at Idaho State, and they've been able to have Braden Parker be able to supply the team with about 8 rebounds per game, but for Idaho State, they are outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. Miguel Tomley, though, has been able to shoot 38% from 3, gives you 12.5 points per game. You get good facilitation on Blake Arrington, nearly 5 assists, 2 steals, 10.5 points per contest. But having Colton Mitchell still out of the fold, he's been out since December, and him being your top 3-point shooter, that's been a little bit of an issue for this Idaho State team. If you look at Idaho State overall, it has been a big giant slog for them just to be able to get points up on the board, and Sacramento State has been doing a much better job with their defense. Sacramento State is right now riding a 6-game losing streak, but it has not been due to their defense. I think that they have given up north of 70 points just once in this run. Meanwhile, you've got an Idaho State team that they have truly been all over the place in terms of their defense as well. As for Idaho State, if you look at regulation and regulation only, this team has now given up at least 70 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. I do think that for Idaho State, they're going to give up a little bit here to Sacramento State. I do think that this is going to be a rather nip and tuck game, and I do think that for Idaho State, the fact that they are very leaky down low and the fact that Idaho State does give up a lot of open threes, it's going to allow Sacramento State to remain in this game. Semi-total 132.5, looking at the over, and we'll take the points with Sacramento State, made them a 2.5 point underdog, 839, 840 on the betting board. UC Santa Barbara is going to be playing us to UC Irvine. Zot, the Anteaters are a 3.5 point road favorite. Your total on this game is 143, and with UC Irvine, I did set them as a favorite of 4.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the 3.5. UC Irvine is number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed per possession away from home. They're allowing 91 points per 100 possessions. They go up against the UC Santa Barbara team that they just have not been themselves defensively. Typically, UC Santa Barbara is like a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That has been anything but the case thus far this season for UC Santa Barbara. As a matter of fact, they're clocking in 134th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 9.6 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home. You've got an Irvine team that has had a pair of guys in Justin Owen, coupled with Darian Sarin, who have been able to combine for 24 points, combine and shoot about 40% from 3, while Andre 3000 Henry is able to shoot 43% from 3, but the real secret sauce for this team, Pierre Cockrell, him being able to dole out the ball with 6 assists to 2.3 turnovers per game, that's really been able to elevate this Irvine team into being a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and the top offensive weapon in this game is A.J. Mitchell on the flip side for Santa Barbara. 19.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, shoots 40% from 3 points, while you've got Josh Pierre-Louis also shoot about 40% from the outside, but this Irvine team just makes it really difficult to be able to grab any sort of rebounders whatsoever. Juan Traore has been able to do a good job with about 15 points per contest down low for this Santa Barbara team, but other than Ariel Bland, who's able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, you don't get a ton down low, and for UC Irvine, this team does a nice job taking away the 3-point arc opponents in a roadside shoot corner environment, shoot about 30.9% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, Santa Barbara, they do give up quite a bit with regards to the 3-point arc at home. 35.5% is what opponents shoot from 3-point range when UC Santa Barbara is at home. I do think that Irvine goes in and they're able to control this game. I did set Irvine as a favorite of 4.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 138.5. I think that Irvine just continues their tremendous defense on the road. Looking at the under and looking at Irvine, 841, 842 on the betting board. UC Riverside is going to be playing us to Cal State Bakersfield. Meet the Roadrunners find themselves as a 5-point road underdog. Your total on this game is 131.5 with Bakersfield. I did set them as an underdog in this ordeal of 6 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it with UC Riverside. Riverside has been a wobbly team that has absolutely no rebounding whatsoever. UC Riverside does not have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but this is a really top-heavy Bakersfield team as well, one that's well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've had Caleb Higgins supply this Bakersfield team with 17 points, 3.5 assists per game, but for Bakersfield, they shoot about 29% from 3. They are a team that's in the bottom 100 with regards to total possessions per game, while turning it over 12 times per contest, while Modestus Concreres is the only guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, when it comes to this Riverside team, you've got 2 guys who have really been controlling the backcourt. That would be Brandon Hargress along with Isaiah Moses. These 2 guys give you about 24.5 points per contest, 8.5 assists to about 3.4 turnovers per game, and while this Riverside team only shoots 38.5% from the floor, 30.5% from 3, they don't beat themselves. They only turn the ball over 9.5 times per game. Need to get more down low. Kyle Owens, gives you 5 rebounds per game. Only guy on the roster giving you north of 4 boards per contest. But for UC Riverside, this team should be able to do a solid job of being able to hold with a Bakersfield team that they have been allowing all sorts of shots from the outside. When it comes to this Bakersfield team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they're allowing opponents from distance to be able to shoot well over 34% from 3-point range. That's an issue that you've got with the team there, 253rd in all of college basketball with Riverside. They actually do a relatively solid job with their interior defense. Meanwhile, they themselves allow opponents to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. So I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to get open looks. Neither of these teams, I think, are going to do an amazing job of executing, but I do think that this game is close enough for late game fouling. I do think that Riverside is going to be able to bust through in this spot where you're going to get a lot of second chances with both of these teams being very rough on the glass. If I told 132, looking at the overhand with Riverside, made them a 6-point favorite, so want to lay up to 5.5 with them. 843, 844 on the betting board. Cal Poly is on the road facing off against CSUN. Cal State Northridge is a favorite of 8.5 to 9 points total on this game. It is anywhere between 140.5 and 141 with Northridge. I did set them as a favorite in this spot of 12 points. I'm going to be one to lay it with Northridge. They have fallen on some tough times. They were one of the best covered teams in all of college basketball to begin the campaign. They have fallen off a little bit on that pace, but this is still a CSUN team that has been able to do a pretty solid job on defense. If you look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, CSUN is a top 125 team in terms of those points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they're still at 78th. While Cal Poly is more around about 250th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and alongside the top 3 in terms of points for on a per possession basis. You've been able to have Kobe Sanders for this Cal Poly team be able to supply the team with in that neighborhood of about 18 points per contest, but you don't have anything down low. Cal Poly, one of the worst teams in the country with regards to rebound rate, going up against a CSUN team that is a top 100 team in terms of their rebound rate. For CSUN, it does feel like ever since G&I Hunt has come into the fold, it has been a little bit more leaky in terms of this defense, but you've got Deontay Bostic, Deshaun Alanikis, pair of guys that have done amazing work with about 32 points, 9.5 boards. They combine to shoot about 35.5% from 3. It is a CSUN team that does need to turn the ball over a little bit less, 14.5 turnovers per contest, but they go up against the Cal Poly team, currently riding an 11-game losing streak, and just take a look at the way that Cal Poly has not been able to get points up on the board. Cal Poly has outscored 61 points or fewer in 6 out of their last 7 games. You've got a Northridge team that, they've been wobbly in terms of their defense, but they still, even with their wobbliness in terms of their defense, have still been relatively okay being able to generate a few points themselves. They've gotten to at least 72 points in 2 out of their last 3 games. I do think that for Northridge, they're going to be able to do a nice job, control things down low, especially with being able to get about 7 boards, 12 points per game out of Keontae Jones, while Joel Armatraden for Cal Poly right now leads the way with regards to their rebounds per game at 4.9. So I do think the Cal Poly going to get decimated in the spot down low. I did set CSUN as a 12-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number, and I did set my total at a 140. Cal Poly really lacking in all facets of basketball, and I just don't think that they do their part with this total. Looking at the under on 141 and one to lay with CSUN. 845, 846 on the betting board. Cal Baptist is going to be playing against UT Arlington. Arlington is an underdog of 3.5 points. Total on this game is 140 to 140.5. I did set Cal Baptist as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. The biggest issue that you've got with UT Arlington is the turnovers. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, this team is in the bottom 40 in all of college basketball. Now, they should be able to hold up against a Baptist team that has been a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate. UT Arlington, they themselves have been above average with regards to their rebound rate, as you've got Jamar Wilson along Dwan Gordon combining for 16.3 rebounds per game, about 24 points between the two of them, and ever since Philip Russell has come into the fold, he's been back for the last 10 games. Shoots about 37% from 3 with 15.5 points per game, but those 16.3 turnovers per game going to be very costly against a Cal Baptist team that, truthfully, they don't generate a whole lot of steals or anything, but they do have a very efficient team in terms of being able to guard the arc, in terms of just doing the little things with Hunter Goodrich along with Yvonne Odriogo, who've been able to combine for 18 rebounds per game for Cal Baptist. They've done a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc. Opponents from three-point range this season, they're shooting in the pocket about 33%. That's 137th in all of college basketball. And UT Arlington has just been getting cooked with this regard. 327th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage with Dominique Daniels. On the flip side for Cal Baptist, being a 19.5 point scorer that's able to supply 3 assists per game. It has been a Cal Baptist team that's been a little bit hit or miss with their three-point shooting, with Blondo Chiqueno give you 10 points but only shooting about 25.5% from 3. But Daniels has been able to shoot about 36.5% from the outside for Cal Baptist. This team does come in relatively solid form in terms of their defense, having allowed 61 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, and they come in having won 4 out of their last 5. Meanwhile, for UT Arlington, to their credit, defense has been much better recently, giving up fewer than 70 points in each out of their last 3 games. They've now given up 73 points or fewer as well, if you take a look back, and now 4 out of their last 6 games as well. So I do think that this is a circumstance where things get a little bit bogged down with regards to the total. I did set mine at a 140.5. We're seeing a few 140s out there. That'd be the max I'd be looking at the over on, because with setting a line at 6.5, gotta expect some late game falling here. So at a 140 or less, looking at the over both Cal Baptist. I do think that they go out there, win the battle from within, and be able to take this game going to lay up to 6 with Cal Baptist, and looking at the over on 140 or less. 847, 848 on the main board. Seattle, they play Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian is an underdog of 8.5 points. Total on this game is 142.5 to 143.5 with Abilene Christian. I did set them as an underdog of 10 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 8.5 with Seattle. Seattle is a top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and when it comes to the Seattle bunch, you've been able to have Cam Tyson do amazing work in terms of headlining the offense with 17.5 points per game, shooting 37.5% from the outside, but you've really got a nice collective that is able to help them out now. Alex Shoemaker, Caleb Williamson, Brandon Chatfield, Jason Christophilius, all these guys give between 10 and 14 points per contest. Williamson and Chatfield down low, combined 12 boards, 2.5 blocks per game for a Seattle team that they do turn the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, but they do face off against an Abilene Christian team that, while they do a nice job of being able to generate those turnovers, they've been able to be a top 40 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This Abilene Christian team is going to get absolutely tossed on the glass. They are outside the top 300 in terms of rebound rate. The Seattle team has been about 87th with that regard. You've got Neil Abdul-Diba, who's been able to give you about 15 points per contest with Ali Abdul-Diba. He shoots about 35.5% from 3-point range, and then Arion Simmons has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but past that, not a lot down low for a Abilene Christian team that they shoot respectably from 3-point range. They do shoot about 34% from the outside, and typically Abilene Christian is terrible with their 3-point shooting defense. Not too bad this year. They're about 110th in off-college basketball. Marked improvement from past years, but Seattle, they are number 8 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They just don't allow a lot down low. This is a Seattle team that can get a little bit loose with the ball, but this is an Abilene Christian team that they themselves give the ball back with nearly 13 turnovers per game. I do think that Seattle going to be able to hold up defensively, and I do think that they do a nice job of being able to win the battle from within to be able to take this game. I did set Seattle as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I made my total 144, so also looking at the over to go along Seattle. 849, 850 on the betting board. Oregon plays us Washington. Washington is an underdog of 5.5 points. Total on this game is 155. I did set Washington as an underdog of 6.5 points. So here at the 5.5, it's really the max I'm willing to lay with Oregon, but I'm going to be willing to lay with Oregon. Oregon should be able to control this game down low. You've got back in the fold a pair of big men in Nate Biddle along with Valley Dante that could be complete game changers. Now, Nate Biddle has been playing very limited minutes since he's been back, so whatever you do get from him, I feel like it's extra credit. The main guy is Dante, being able to give you a block and a half, 8 rebounds per game, going up against a Washington team that is well outside the top 100 with regards to their rebound rate. They've been able to get some good versatility with about 6.5 points, 3.5 assists per game out of Paul Mulcahy, but he hasn't necessarily been the guy that they were hoping for since they brought him in via the transfer portal from Rutgers, as Xavier Wheeler and Keon Brooks have really been your main 2 guys, combining for about 36.5 points, nearly 7 assists, but also 5.5 turnovers between these 2 guys for a Washington team that they do shoot about 34.5% from 3, but Washington has now ascended back into the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they do leave themselves very susceptible from beyond the arc away from home, allowing opponents to shoot 38.5% from 3-point range. Jackson Shellset has been amazing for this Oregon team at being able to hit those outside shots. He's been able to give you about 3 assists per contest, with Jermaine Cuisinart and he both being able to give you in the neighborhood about 13 to 14 points per contest. It's an Oregon team that they also have some very demonstrative home and road splits with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They lock down from the arc at home, allowing opponents to shoot 31.1% from 3. Away from home, that goes to about 40.5% from 3-point range. And with Washington just being a team that's now playing at warp speed, they're in the top 30 in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that you're going to be able to see Oregon go bombs away. And the first time around, Oregon was able to do a very solid work on the road, being able to take it to Washington. That was a final count of 76 to 74. I do think that you see a little bit more shot making in this game, as first time around, you did see Washington just get very sloppy with the ball. They had 13 turnovers in that game. I do think that things are going to be cranked up a little bit more, and I do think that Oregon is going to be able to get it done once again. Set them as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay with Oregon, and did make my total 156.5, so you're at the 155.5. Also looking over 8:51, 8:52 on the board. Oregon State plays us to Washington State, and Washington State is a favorite on the road of 9 points. Total on this game, 135.5. I did set my line at a 7.5. I'm going to be looking at the points with Oregon State. Oregon State has been a completely different team defensively when they've been at home rather than in a road/neutral environment. Not that this team is amazing to start with, 232nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up about 22.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. You've got Jordan Pope, who's been able to supply 18 points per game. This team is going to lose the battle down low. Washington State, a top 75 team with regards to the rebound rate. You've been able to have Andre Yagmovsky be able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per game down low. At 6'8", he's got some good versatility, and then you've got Isaac Jones being able to chip in there about 8 boards, 16 points per game for a Washington State team that has been pretty rock solid with their defense both at home and on the road. For Washington State, they rank 60th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do give up about 9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. Not too bad of a split. Miles Rice chips in there about 3.5 assists per game. You've been able to get about 15.5 points out of him for a Washington State team that overall, they do shoot about 34% from three-point range. Oregon State, not a team that's really going to light you up from three-point range. Dexter O'Connell has been able to give you 12 points per contest, but not a threat to be able to shoot from three-point range. And for Washington State, this team has done a nice job of not allowing a lot of second chances. They are a bunch that they do allow opponents to shoot 34% from three-point range away from home, and I do think that Jordan Pope is going to be able to get his in this game. It is also just a tough place to play in general over in Corvallis, but I do think that Washington State, they go on the road, they get the win. I just don't think they've got enough offense to be able to cover with both of these teams in terms of possessions per 40 minutes. They are well outside the top 225 with that regard, so I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring slog. Set my total 131.5, looking under, and I'm looking at north of 8 here with Oregon State. 8:53, 8:54 on the betting board. Pepperdine plays us to San Francisco, and the Dons are an 8.5 point favorite on the road. Total on this game between 145 and 145.5. I did set San Francisco as a favorite of 8.5 points, so we're going to be waiting on a little bit of movement here with the line. It's a San Francisco team that's in the top 30 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against the Pepperdine team that they're well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. But that said, this Pepperdine team has actually been relatively solid with their offense, but quite unearthly with regards to their defense for this Pepperdine team. Javon Porter coming back in the fold. He's actually the brother of Michael Porter. He's been able to give the team 13 points, 6 boards over the last 2 seasons. He's been able to do a nice job of being able to make some nice contributions. But when it comes to Jonathan Mogbo and what he's able to do down low for the San Francisco team, really second to none, as San Francisco is a top 40 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that he's the only guy that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game, 15.5 points, 10.5 boards, also gives you 3.5 assists per game. Mongolian Mike, along with Marcus Williams in the backcourt, they combine for about 6.5 assists. Mongolian Mike is able to shoot about 35% from 3, and all in all, it is a San Francisco team that they do shoot 35% from the outside. Marcus Williams, he's been able to supply the team with about 14 points per contest. Meanwhile, for Pepperdine, you do have a pair of guys in Michael Leger along with Houston Mallett, who are combining for about 34 points per game. Both of these guys shoot north of 40% from 3 4. A Pepperdine team that as a whole, they're shooting about 34.5% from the outside, but I do think that the way that San Francisco is able to guard the arc, this team is currently allowing opponents to shoot just 33% from 3-point range in a roadside-neutral court environment. That should be able to win out, and this is a Pepperdine team that has been significantly better at home with regards to their offense in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are scoring about 13.2 points more per 100 possessions, but the San Francisco team has been one of the best at being able to travel with their defense all season long. Did set my total at 146.5. I think the Pepperdine gets their points, but I also think that they allow a lot of wide open shots. So looking at the over end at 8 or less, looking to lay it with San Francisco 9 or more. Taking the points with the Pepperdine. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 8:55, 8:56. It is Hawaii. They play us to UC San Diego. UC San Diego is a 1-point road favorite on the island. Total on this game is 137.5. I did make Hawaii the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them. Hawaii, I do have metrically as the worst team in this one, but when you have to travel multiple time zones, when you have to play that game out there in Hawaii, I do think that that takes a lot of precedent. It's a UC San Diego team that is a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, doing a solid job down low. You've been able to have Francis Nwoke be a versatile player with about 5 boards, 11.5 points, shooting 33% from 3-point range, and Emmanuel Schminga, when he's been out there, as he's dealt with injuries all season long, has been able to supply the team with about 5 boards, nice interior presence to be able to help out Bryce Pope along Tyler McGee in the backcourt. Since McGee has returned to the fold, he's been able to help out Pope with both of these guys being able to combine for about 34 points. You've got McGee shooting 44.5% from 3-point range against a Hawaii team that they do a relatively solid job of guarding from the outside. Hawaii is now outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and ironically, Hawaii has been much worse on defense at home rather than on the road. Hawaii is allowing opponents to shoot 34.5% from three-point range at home, 32.5% in a roadside shooting court environment, but I do think that Hawaii going to be able to find it a little bit more on the island. You've got Hawaii be able to have Justin McCoy really be able to rise up, former top 300 recruit of the ACC, being able to give you about 11 points in the high 30s from three-point range. Couple that with Noel Coleman and him being able to go into takeover mode with about 13 points per contest for Hawaii. Bunch of they're only shooting about 31.5% from three. I do think that they're going to find it a bit more from the outside. You've been able to have Mo Sek down low, be a guy that plays a little bit in minutes, but is a nice shot blocker, giving you a little bit over a block per contest. They go up against a UC San Diego team that, while they've been able to be pretty explosive on offense, this is a defense that sometimes does leave a little bit of something to be desired in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It also takes quite a bit of a drop off when they are away from home. With San Diego, they're about 121st with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 7.5 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home. And then when you've got someone like a Javon McClanahan who's able to give you 10 points, is able to do out the ball relatively well, I do think that Hawaii going to be able to get the job done, and Hawaii is going to be able to get revenge from the first time around when you see San Diego on their home floor won by a count of 67-61, a game where you saw Hawaii in that game have 20 turnovers against a San Diego team that really doesn't generate a ton of turnovers. So I did set my line at 1.5 for Hawaii. I'm going to be looking at them right on the money line. Made my total a 135.5. So also going to be taking a look at the 137.5 under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-527, 306-528. Binghamton is going to be playing us Albany, and Albany is an underdog of 2.5 points. So on this game is 155, and with Albany, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I really like what Binghamton did in the offseason, bringing in two really high-level transfers, and Timu Chenery along with Simir Torrance. Torrance has really been on a torrid pace of being able to give you darn near a triple-double night in and night out. Give you about 9 points, 6 boards, 7.3 assists per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, while Chenery has been your main scorer, being able to supply the team with 14.5 points per game. This is a Binghamton team that they certainly do leave something to be desired with regards to taking care of the ball, north of 13 turnovers per game, going up against an Albany team that they themselves turn the ball over nearly 14 times per contest. Albany is going to have the best pure rebounder in this game. That would be Jonathan Beagle, who's been able to give you about 9 rebounds per game, and you've had Sebastian Thomas be able to give out nearly 4 assists per game, but this Binghamton team overall, with having down low Samir Torrance, has been able to do a good job on the glass, 104th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Albany more on 154th, and though Albany is a top 40 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, Binghamton doesn't look too much to the outside. They only shoot about 29% from three. They've been able to get a little bit of something with the three-point shooting of Namia Benson, who's been able to give you about 10 points, shoots 37.5% from three, but this is an Albany team that they look to play at warp speed. As a result, they've given up 79 plus points in each of their last 5 games. You've got a Binghamton team that they've actually done a very good job with regards to their defense. In their last 4 games, they have given up in regulation fewer than 70 points in every one of them. I do think that Binghamton going to be able to slow down this Albany team a little bit more, win from within, and be able to take this game set by total 151, looking under, and 1 to lay up to 2.5 with Binghamton. 306-529, 306-530. Bryant is going to be playing us in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is an underdog of 5 to 5.5 points. The last game is 158 to 158.5. These are two teams that are in the top 25 with regards to total possessions per game, even though they play relatively solid defense. Going to be looking at the under semi-total at a 160.5. Bryant, as a matter of fact, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 57th in all of college basketball. You would not know it by taking a look at their last game, as last time Bryant hit the floor, they were in a 79 to 72 slobber knocker against Maine, and this has been a Bryant team that has now given up 79 plus points in 3 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a New Hampshire team that they themselves have been very high-powered with regards to their offense, getting to at least 79 points in each of their last 3 games, and for New Hampshire, they do have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Clarence Daniels. He's been able to supply 21 points, 9 boards per contest, and then being able to help him out in the backcourt, being able to supply about 5 assists per game is Ahmad Robinson. For Bryant, this is also a team that's well outside the top 300 with regards to rebound rate. You do have Earl Timberlake, though, bringing sexy back, 9 points, 4 assists, 14.5 points. Doesn't shoot it from three-point range at all for a Bryant team that they only shoot about 65.5% of the free throw line. On a line like this, I do think that you have to have some trepidation there. It's a big reason why I could only set Bryant as a 4.5 point favorite. So at the 5+, I'm going to be looking at the points with a New Hampshire team that's done a nice job of being able to take care of the ball themselves. Both of these teams, for how fast they play, they do a nice job, be able to lock it down. Both teams have about 11.7 turnovers per game now. New Hampshire is able to generate just a few more steals, about 7.5 per contest, and with Jackson Robinson stepping up, giving the team 6.5 boards per contest, I do think the New Hampshire going to do a nice job of folding in there against a Bryant team that's been a little bit touch and go recently. So set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points. I think that this is close enough for late game filling. Set my total at a 160.5. So win over and looking at New Hampshire with the points. 306-531, 306-532. North Alabama, it's a road face off against North Florida. North Florida is a favorite of 6 points. So on this game, it's 151. I did set North Florida as a favorite of 2 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the 6 with North Alabama. North Alabama has been a top 150 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And though North Florida has been able to go on a nice run here in the Atlantic Sun, I do have still quite a few question marks with them. It's a North Florida squad that has good versatility and is able to bomb it from 3-point range, with Chaz Lanier being your main 3-point shooter. He's been able to shoot about for 18.5 points, 46% from 3-point range. And then you got Dorian James shooting 47% from the outside. He's been able to supply the team with 10.5 points per game. But for everything that North Florida does really well with their 3-point shooting offense, in terms of their 3-point shooting defense, it has been a little bit of a wreck there within the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. That does go down to fewer than 30% at home, north of 40% in a roadside shoot court environment. And they do go up against the North Alabama team that they themselves are outside the top 250 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. But I do think that Davion Forrest, being able to give you 8+ rebounds per game, going to be very impactful in this spot. You've had a pair of guys in KJ Johnson along Jakari Lane be able to combine for about 29 or so points per contest for a North Alabama team that overall they do shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. You got a 44% 3-point shooter with about 9.5 points, 5 boards, and Tim Smith, who I really do like. And I do think that North Alabama does a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. Both of these teams well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And you've got a North Alabama team that's gone to at least 79 points for their last 5 games. When it comes to North Florida, this team has also been able to supply north of 70 points in each of their last 5 games. I think that you get a high-powered, up-tempo game that's going to be rather nip and tuck. And with North Alabama holding up on the glass, I do think that they hold in this game. So I might total 156 looking over, and I'm going to be looking at the points with North Alabama. Felt like they should be a 2-point dog. 306, 533, 306, 534. So no, it's going to be playing against Lemoyne. Lemoyne is a favorite of 2.5 points on the road. Total on this game between 143 and 144. I did set Lemoyne as a favorite of 4.5 points. So here at the 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Lemoyne. They've really been able to have Keon Cleary become a do-it-all sort of player. He gives you about 15 points, 5.5 boards. You don't have great size with Lemoyne. They're outside the top 300 with regards to rebound rate. Someone else outside the top 275 in terms of rebound rate, opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, points scored, and points allowed on a per possession basis. This team, quite frankly, just has not been able to get a lot right. Saying Tony Felder. I do like what Tony Felder brings in the backcourt. 3 assists, about 2 turnovers per game. He's been able to supply the team with about 12 points per contest, but Stony does not have a single guy outside of Max Zagorowski who's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. That helps out a Lemoyne team that is very undersized, but does a good job taking care of the ball. 11 turnovers per game. They shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range with Lemoyne. Every one of your top 3 scorers and 4 out of your top 5 shoot at least 36% from 3-point range. But Clora has now been able to give you about 5 boards, 7 points per contest to be able to help out as well. And this is a Stony team that, while Lemoyne does a good job of taking care of the ball, they turn the ball over 14 times per contest. They don't generate a whole heck of a lot of steals. You've been having in and out of the full one of your top guys in Jackson Bengini, who's been able to give you 35% 3-point shooting, 12.5 points per game, and has been able to return for the team, but 5 points for fear in 2 of the last 4 games. He's been incredibly inconsistent ever since then with this Lemoyne team. They have been giving it up on defense. 73 plus points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games, but for Sonel, this offense has been very brutal. They have scored 72 points for fear in all but 1 of their conference games thus far, so good old situation of something's got to give. Did set my total of 142.5. Here at the 144, looking at the under, though Lemoyne is giving up north of 12 points more per 100 possessions away from home. I just don't think Sonel does their part, so want to lay up to 4 with Lemoyne, and the under is what I'm taking on the total. 306, 535, 306, 536. Long Island plays host to Merrimack. Merrimack does find themselves as 11 to 10 point favorites. Total on this game, 134.5. With Merrimack, I did set them as an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. Long Island has had a tough time taking care of the ball. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, bottom 75 team in all of college basketball. Now, with LIU, this is a top 100 team in terms of being able to guard the 3-point arc, but Merrimack doesn't look to shoot it from 3 at all. They only shoot about 29.5% from 3. This team is looking to pound it inside, other than Devin Savage. Really, nobody on the roster shoots north of 32% from 3, but Merrimack, they're a top 20 team once again with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, having a pair of guys in Jordan DeCock along with Adam Clark combined for 4.5 steals per game. DeCock, 17 points, 6 boards per contest, while Clark has been able to give you about 11.5 points per game. And typically this Merrimack team is just completely outgunned down low. They're a team that's well outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. LIU, though, they're 324th, other than RJ Green, and the fact that he's been able to give you about 7 boards per contest. You don't get much there. You've got Ty and Terrell Strickland, who have been the father's sons, who've been able to step up a little bit more. Ty Strickland, 7.5 points. The son of Rod Strickland, who was in the NBA for quite some time, and then Terrell, he's been able to do a solid job of being able to give you 3 assists per contest, but both of these guys don't shoot it well from 3. It's a Long Island team that they only shoot about 30% from distance with all the turnovers, and with the fact that LIU has been a team that, even with guarding the 3-point arc well, they're still well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that Merrimack team that just continues to pound teams with regards to their defense. 55 points of fear surrender in 3 of their last 4 games. That Merrimack takes hold of this game. I'm willing to lay up to 11 with Merrimack, and I did set my total at 131.5. I just don't think that Long Island does their part with this total. Looking under and looking at Merrimack laying the points, 3 of 6-5-37, 3 of 6-5-38, and JIT plays also Vermont. Vermont is a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. Totals between 131 to 132.5. I did set Vermont as a favorite of 13.5 points. I'm willing to lay up to 13 with them, and JIT is well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and JIT just doesn't force a lot of turnovers against a Vermont team that is in the top 25 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, Vermont will allow you some open opportunities from 3. Vermont, in terms of the 3-point shooting defense, they're about 125th in all of college basketball. It's not great, it's not terrible, and this is a Vermont team that they really don't have anyone on the roster that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. Would like to see Matt Verado, who stands about 6'7", be able to give you more boards. He's a double-figure scorer that shoots north of 35% from 3, but is just unwilling to get his nose dirty. But TJ Long is able to shoot 40% from 3. He's able to give you about 13.5 points per contest. And then for NJIT, Elijah Buchanan has been a guy that's been able to stuff the stat sheet, being able to supply the team with about 11.5 points, 6 boards, but only shoots about 25.5% from 3 for an NJIT team that, as a whole, they shoot 30.5% from distance. They turn the ball over 12 times per contest. That's not too bad. And with having Tariq Francis come back and be able to supply the team with 12 points per contest, that's given them a little bit of an offensive boost. And it is an NJIT team that has been looking to play quite a bit more up-tempo, and that's been showing with their defensive numbers. Last time that NJIT allowed a team to score fewer than 70 points in a game, you have to go all the way back to the calendar year of 2023. Meanwhile, Vermont, they have now in regulation given up 62 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. I think that NJIT is just going to be stuck in the mud in this game, but I do think that Vermont does their part in terms of being able to get this total over. Vermont, once again, a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, going up against an NJIT team that's just bleeding points right now. Set my total 137.5. Looking at the over, and willing to lay up to 13 with Vermont. 3 of 6-5-39, 3 of 6-5-40. Central Connecticut plays us to Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart is a underdog of 6 of 6.5 points. Totals between 145 and 146. Said Sacred Heart as an underdog of 4 points. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Central Connecticut. Biggest issue that you've got with this team is that they just really don't have a lot of rebounding. Central Connecticut, in terms of their rebound rate, about 165th in the country, but you don't have anyone that really gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. You've got a really good backcourt, though, with Alan Jean Rose being able to give you 16 points, shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range, but I do think that Sacred Heart is going to be able to hold in there because you've got Nico Galletti and his versatility being able to supply 14 points. He's able to chip in there about 6 boards, while Alex Sobel has been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Kellen Amos, he's been able to step up a little bit more, giving you about 5 boards, 12 points per game, but doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3-point range. Going up against the Sacred Heart team that they have been a top 175 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Central Connecticut team that has their warts in terms of being able to guard the arc. Central Connecticut 246th in all of college basketball when it comes to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. For the Sacred Heart team, they're about 269th in the country. They've been far better at home rather than on the road. On the road, it's a Sacred Heart team allowing opponents to shoot 38.5% from 3. Meanwhile, that dives down to more like 31% when they're at home. Both of these teams relatively equal with the way that they generate turnovers and the way that they turn the ball over as well. But I think that that duo of Galletti along Sobel, coupled with the fact that you've got a couple Metro Atlantic backcourt pieces that should be able to help out, most notably Aiden Carpenter, who's been able to give you about 9-point shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range for Sacred Heart, for a Sacred Heart team that has been able to get to at least 70 points in each of their last 4 games. Keeps them lively against a Central Connecticut team that, to their credit, they've allowed 71 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, but the offense has been held to 72 or less in 4 out of their last 5 as well. So I do think that Central Connecticut gets another close win. Set my line at 4, so going to be willing to take the 6 with this Sacred Heart team. I did set my total at a 146. Here at the 145, going to be looking at the over. I think we get some late game felling and looking at the points with Sacred Heart. 3 of 6-5-41, 3 of 6-5-42. Jacksonville is going to be playing us to Central Arkansas, and Central Arkansas is a 7-point underdog with your total 147 to 147.5. Central Arkansas I did set as an underdog of 4.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take those points. Jacksonville just has been all sorts of wobbly with regards to their defense, as they've been having a lot of guys be in and out of the fold. Bryce Workman has been someone deal with an injury. Marcus Cyblack, he's been able to step up, giving you about 3 assists, 12 points per contest, but for Jacksonville, this team shoots below 34% from 3-point range. This team, with regards to their offensive efficiency, has just not been a team that's been able to execute all season long. 254th in all of college basketball in this regard. Now, Jacksonville is a team that is quite a bit better when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment, but still 317th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, so they are giving up right around about 25 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. I do think that we are going to see that iron out just a little bit more, and they get to go up against a bunch in Central Arkansas that, while they are wretched with their their defense. They're outside the top 3 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They should be able to do a relatively solid job playing even up down low with Obianga Itum, who's been able to give you about 8 rebounds per game, and Tucker Anderson. He's a 6'9" combo player, giving you 14 points, shooting 37% from 3. Central Arkansas as a whole, they do shoot 34% from distance. They need to hit threes to be able to hold in this game, and for Jacksonville, they are 318th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, despite the fact that Jacksonville is holding teams to below 30% from 3-point range at home. They give up north of 40% away from home. I do think that things are going to be ironing out. I think that those are strange splits where they've been a just beneficiary of the matter of circumstance. Central Arkansas has had a rough time guarding all season long. Jacksonville has had a rough time guarding all season long, and both of these teams, they're not super duper fast, but they're semi-tempo. I do think they are close enough for late game filling here as well, so I semi-total 154.5. I'm looking at the over, and at 5 or more going to be willing to take the points with Central Arkansas. 306, 543, 306, 544. UMBC plays, let's see, UMass Lowell. Lowell is a favorite of 7.5 points, so on this game, 162.5. I did say UMass Lowell as a favorite of 6.5 points. So this is a circumstance where at 7+, going to be taking a look at the points with the UMBC. UMBC well outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But this is a UMass Lowell team that they do turn the ball over north of 14 times per game. It is a Lowell team that has been a top 40 team with regards to rebound rate. Abdul Kareem Koulibaly is coming back to the fold, but he clearly is not himself. Max Brooks, who was an all-AEC defensive player a few seasons ago with about 2 blocks, 6 boards per contest. He's really been able to hold it down on Yende Kim. He's been able to give you about 5 boards, 5 assists, nearly 15 points per game. He's been rock solid for this UMass Lowell team, but for UMass Lowell, this is a team that, even though they do an absolutely tremendous job down low, this is a team that they can be at a little bit more from their perimeter and from the outside. This is a Massachusetts Lowell team that they have been able to do a solid job of being able to guard the arc away from home rather than at home. It's very unique, as UMass Lowell is 15th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from 3 at home, 25% in a roadside shoot record environment, while UMBC is more around 146 with this regard. It is a UMBC team that they've got Deion Brown, who's been able to do a nice job being able to give you about 15.5 points, 6 rebounds per game with UMBC. Overall, this has been a team that's been able to shoot about 36 to 37% from 3-point range. And for UMBC, they do turn the ball over north of 12 times per contest, but a lot of that is because they're one of the most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. UMass Lowell has been scoring, ironically enough, about 6.5 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home. Meanwhile, this is a UMBC team that's about 190th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. You've got a UMass Lowell team, though, that has been dealing with quite a few injuries, and I do think that you get a relatively up-tempo game, which is why I did set my total at a 162.5. I'm seeing one straight 163 pop up as well at a 163 or higher, looking under 162 or less, going to be looking at the over. But I do think that with UMBC, even though their defense has been lackadaisical to say the least, I think that they do just enough in this game to be able to hold in there against a UMass Lowell team that is very much top-heavy down low. So I'm going to be taking a look at the points with UMBC and with regards to this total at a 163 or higher, diving in on the under. 306, 545, 306, 546. Wagner hits the road face-off against Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson is a 2-point favorite. Your total is between 139 and 139.5 with Fairleigh Dickinson. Made them the 1.5 point underdog. I like Wagner on the money line. Wagner has been able to do tremendous work defensively. They leave a lot to be desired on offense, so Wagner is shooting more around about 32 to 33% from 3-point range. Melvin Council has really been your lone consistent scorer. He's been able to supply the team with 14.5 points, right around 5.5 boards. Nobody else really gives you double figures, but for Wagner, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're about 112th in all of college basketball, going up against the Fairleigh Dickinson team. Well, they've been fairly awful with regards to being able to just guard in general. 279th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They get no boost from being at home whatsoever, though they've been able to do a relatively solid job down low. Ansley Almoner, along Joel Emmanuel, Sean Moore, these 3 guys, they've been able to combine for about 17 rebounds per game. Almoner has been your top scorer with about 16.5 points per game for a Fairleigh Dickinson team that they shoot about 33.5% from 3-point range. This is a short team, but they're not the world's worst team on the glass. This is a Wagner team that they themselves do have some issues with regards to being up at the glass as well. You don't necessarily have that one main beastly guy down low that's going to be able to give you 7+ rebounds per game. Despite that, this is a Wagner team that still right around about 228th in the country with regards to rebound rate. What they do a nice job of is just cutting you off from the outside. 42nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage with this Wagner team. Even though they've had a lot of, shall we say, switchable pieces in the backcourt, they have not necessarily been able to find their main point guard, with Javier Esquera dealing with a little bit of an injury. You've had really the entirety of the backcourt being banged up, but that said, they still have only been turned the ball over about 10 times per contest, with Esquera now being back to the fold, giving you about 4.5 assists per game. Should be just enough for Wagner to get the job done against the Fairleigh Dickinson team that I think is going to be bottled up in this one. Set by total 137.5. I think that Wagner controls the tempo in this game. Looking under and looking at Wagner on the money line. 306, 547, 306, 548. Looks come. Plays 06, to Queens. Queens NC is an underdog of 8 points. Total is 168. I did set Queens as an underdog of 11.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Lipscomb. Lipscomb is a team well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, but so is Queens. With Queens, you just don't have a lot of size with this team. Now, it's a bunch that they're going to need to really rely upon the three ball to be able to hold in there, but Lipscomb just does it better. Lipscomb has been able to get absolutely tremendous production out of Darren Boyd with about 17.5 points per contest, and a team that, as a whole for Lipscomb, has been able to shoot from three-point range about 37%. They go up against Queens NC team that has honestly not done a bad job of being able to guard the arc. They're in the top 150 with this regard, but it is a Queens team that they're very inconsistent with the way that they do guard the three-point line, and overall, they're a team that's well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, with this Lipscomb team, even though they don't necessarily have a ton of size on low, they are 288th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but a team that has been able to do an okay job of being able to have A.J. McGinnis, Will Pruitt, be able to just generate some scoring in general with about 25.5 points per contest to offset that rough defense, shooting about 38.5% from three-point range, and you've been able to get about 2 steals, about 4 assists, 8 points per game out of Joe Anderson. He's been a nice constant for this team in the backcourt. It is a Queens NC team that down low you've been able to have BJ McLaurin give you about 6 boards per contest. Dayton Aldenbury has been able to give you 18 points per game as well. But this is a Queens NC team that they are a bunch that they're very inconsistent with regards to their three-point shooting as well at about 33.5%. They turn the ball over 12 times per contest, and with them just not being able to generate a lot of second chances on the boards, that should allow Lipscomb to be able to take hold of this game. I think that's going to be a high-scoring expose. I think we went a little bit too far just because I don't know if Queens is going to be able to do their part with this total, even though it is a Queens team that they themselves have been able to get past 80 in each of their last 4 games. It's been against lesser competition. Now they face off against a Lipscomb team that has really been the creme de la creme out there in the Atlantic Sun thus far. So I did set my total at a 165.5, low under, and I'm willing to lay up to 11 with Lipscomb. And we close things out with the DK Network Right Pick. 306, 549, 306, 550. Austin P plays host to Kennesaw State. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. As for Kennesaw State, they find themselves as a 2-point road favorite. Your total on this game, it is 154.5 to 155. I did set my total at 149. So my right pick is going to be on the under. We got a Kennesaw State team that's number 1 in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. Austin P, they are 331st. And for Austin P, in regulation only, because they played a few games that went to overtime, in regulation, they have given up 72 points or fewer in 20 out of their last 24 games. I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job of slowing down a Kennesaw State team that, they've just been a very interesting team in general with regards to their offense. Kennesaw State, a below-average three-point shooting team. They've been able to get some good production out of Simeon Kodal, who's been able to give you 16.5 points per contest. He and Tyrell Burden have been your main 2 pieces in the backcourt, being able to contribute for this offense, combined for about 32 points. With Burden, he gives you 6 assists per game, and it's a Kennesaw State team that, for being number 1 in terms of total possessions per game, 11.8 turnovers, that's not bad, but both of these teams are going to need to hit free throws, and they have not been able to do so all season long. Austin P, 60% at the free throw line at home, bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball, while Kennesaw State shooting 67.4%, that is about 307th in all of college basketball. It is an Austin P team that, while they are about 272nd in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, they do a nice job of being able to cut off the three-point arc, allowing opponents to shoot just 30.1% from three-point range, and though Kennesaw State only shoots 32.8% from 3, they take 43.6% of their shots from beyond the arc. That ranks 39th in terms of three-point rate in all of college basketball. You've got DeMarcus Sharp as well for this Austin P team, who's really had to take on a new identity. Last year among qualifying D1 players, he was the top three-point shooter in all of college basketball percentage-wise at 54.7%. That's down to 6.7% this season, as he's been really that matrix, the guy that stuffs the stat sheet. As he leads the team in all 5 major categories. Points with 17.3, 7 boards, 4.7 assists, 2.2 steals, and then 0.9 blocks per contest as well. So he has really done it all. You've been able to have Desi Jones be able to give you about 11.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, and Javonte Black, Isaac Haney, these 2 guys, they've been able to combine to shoot about 39.5% from three-point range, but you do have a Kennesaw State team that, while they're relatively rough with their defense, they're about 280th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a Kennesaw State team that they don't travel the worst. They only give up about 4 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from them rather than when they are at home. Both of these teams are probably going to have a little bit of a rough time being able to generate second chances. Austin B does a really good job of being able to protect the ball, but they're a little bit rough on the glass. Kennesaw State about 140th in all of college basketball with regards to offensive rebound rate. And this is a Kennesaw State team that, with regards to their three-point shooting defense, it's actually better on the road than it has been at home. And I do think that Austin P not going to be able to hit a lot of outside shots, but I do think that they slow this game down, they get their tempo, and they're able to pull it out. I did set Austin P as a 3-point favorite, so I'm going to look at them on the money line. I think that Austin P, being 331st in the country with regards to total possessions per game, slows this game down. My write-up is on the under end. That'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to Justin Perri of Shock Value Bets for joining me in the last segment. If you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, maybe it does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thanks so much for tuning in.